Hello, hello. Let's add my overlay. Dun, dun, dun. How goes it? How goes it? Here we are to do the most exciting thing ever and talk about Areo Hotah, everyone's favorite character. I mean, when people think when they rank their top 10 characters, Areo Hotah is usually number one on most people's lists, right? Um, I mean, it's especially like point of view. When I think like, oh, the character I was most like wanting to read when Dance with Dragons came out, and then there was only one Ariel Hotah chapter, and I'm like, oh man, ah. um, but let's see. People were talking about how long it would take to um, finish Winds of Winter if we're um, taking about a month. I think it's actually not 3 to 4 weeks, but actually like 5 weeks actually. So, but nonetheless, if it's about a month, we would get what 12 chapters a year. So we'd finish in what 5 years. That would be 60 chapters in 5 years, and then you kind of have George has already done. So it'd be like 5.5 years to finish Winds of Winter. But who knows about the rate? I mean, we might slow down, we might speed up. There's certain chapters that I think are actually going to be faster than others. I think the battle chapters, they are there's just less going on in it, and so I could all the battle chapters could be written um, at the same time, as long as they're you know um, they don't take as much planning of, oh, we need all this intricacy. It's just of this character and that character. It's just the sound of they don't have cannons, do they? The sound of the ships crunching into ships in the harbor, or the steel on steel kind of stuff. I think those that would actually go faster. Um, that's probably why a couple of the sample chapters are already battle chapters. But yeah, so I mean, it all depends. I mean, certain chapters are going to take longer than others, but uh, but who knows? We're just gonna do a few chapters. Do some chapters, see how it all goes, and then if it's fun, who knows? And maybe we'll be like 2 years in, and Winds of Winter will be announced. But we're just gonna go along and see how things go. Um, let's see here. Uh, could all the giant references in A Song of Ice and Fire be setting up Bran as the Night's King? He rides on the back of a giant Hodor throughout the whole story. I mean, thought that was kind of the idea that Bran is uh, warging Hodor, and that's kind of like the idea of what happened in the past, that the Children of the Forest would warg giants in battle, something like that. I think that was the reference in my mind, in my head canon, that what was going on with why there's all this talk of giants. Um, but to actually be in a real battle, I mean, he did it a little bit on the way into the cave of the three-eyed crow, and then we know he's going to be screwing stuff up when he goes back in time, and probably Hodor will be holding the door and doing defense there and that kind of stuff. So, but any current giants being warged, I don't know. I mean, the only giant we know of right now is one, and who knows if he's being warged by some sort of child or whatever. Um, yeah. Um, the phrase "pressed on" is never used in Ice and Fire. Could be a little Easter egg. Yeah, so when I was young, some people would try. So Lee press-on nails were like a thing on TV, and so like when people would try to make fun of my name, it would be like they'd be like, "Oh, Lee pressed on nails." That was like the best they could do with Preston. Um, so It's if only 1-1. So the whole idea of 1-1 being worked by Sweet Robin is that Sweet Robin has a scene in which he takes his doll and the giant is he pretends that his doll is a giant attacking Winterfell, and he destroys some of Winterfell, and so some people wonder what kind of uh, forecasting that is. I mean, I suppose if you go by the show, a warg did crash through the door of Winterfell or whatever. Um, uh, is it actually Sweet Robin doing any of it? I don't know. But um, let's see. Do you think Harry Strickling being in the final battle in the show is a um, indentation of Aegon spending time on the throne? I mean, I thought Aegon would be on the throne. I know that George in interviews said that there would be several more people on the throne before the end. Um, and so when you even think about that, like several kind of idea, like what does it mean? Because it can't just be like Cersei, Dany, Don, right? That's not several. So you kind of, I always thought that there would be um, a Aegon on the throne situation, at least when Dany comes in for the Dance of the Dragons, and then they kind of fight. I think that if anything they did with the show is they combined any sort of like Cersei Dany fight that would happen with a Aegon Dany fight, and just kind of had it be one one battle rather than having it a bunch of different claimants in succession. But we have the potential for Myrcella, we have the potential for Cersei, we have the potential for Aegon. Um, be I can't think of anybody else that would really be sitting the Iron Throne. Um, and then is fanfic Balon Swann gay? Balon. This gets into the so the fandom wonders about all these little things, and so there is this discussion of whether or not Balon Swann is gay, um, and this is mainly just on the fact that Ariana like tries to hit on him at the feast, and he doesn't kind of react, and Areo Hotah kind of says she's not gonna have very much luck with this guy. He's a man, and Ares Oakheart was a boy. Which, if you really go into like subtext, it's like, oh, is Areo Hotah gay? And he's using his gaydar to immediately recognize like Balon Swann, and so because Areo Hotah also like doesn't have any doesn't you have no clues about his sexuality. There's one moment in which there's kind of a little fake outline in the Watcher chapter where he says, "Oh, Lady Nim is wearing nothing," and that was to Areo Hotah's liking, because then she couldn't hide any weapons. It wasn't like, "Oh, Lady Nim is naked," and he liked it because Lady Nim is hot. But it was oh no, it was so he liked it so she couldn't hide any weapons, and so it's this fake out. It's like, is Areo Hotah gay? Is he like recognizing Balon Swann being gay? But it's really, I mean, maybe there's hints of that, because also like in the Ariana 2 Winds of Winter chapter, she kind of she meets the guy from the Golden Company who's a bit I'd say non-binary in many respects. Lisono Mar, where he's kind of, you're not sure what Lisono Mar is, but and she's immediately like thrown off, like, oh crap, I can't seduce this guy. And then she's gonna like run into John Connington, who absolutely is gay, and she won't be able to seduce John Connington. So it's kind of this I mean, in kind of a funny like string of people that she has no luck with. But there's very little evidence. But it's one of those things that people talk about, that, oh, maybe Balon Swann's gay. Yeah, sure, could be. Could be. You can have much homoerotic stuff between Areo Hotah and Balon Swann as you want. Um, there are more than one instance of people stealing identities by taking people's armors, Renly's armor, Sandor's helm, etc. Could this has happened with the trident and Rhaegar's armor and identity? Certainly, there's a lot of talk about this. There's a lot of people in the fandom have talked about whether or not Rhaegar could have been glamored or something. Weird discussions of his rubies. Obviously Mance Rayder has his like throbbing ruby uh, bracelet, which matches Melisandre's like collar, right? And so people think about whether there's some sort of glamour on Rhaegar, but at the same time, like afterwards they would have found his body, right? And they would have burned his body. So I tend to not think that Rhaegar was using glamour in that respect. I mean, he might have been using glamour to like help him win the jousting tournament or something, because it's really ridiculous that he was winning the jousting tournament. But of course, the easier explanation for him winning the jousting tournament is that he just freaking bribed people and told them to lose to him, which seems much more likely and than having a magical explanation. I mean, but there is some talk in the fandom about Rhaegar's rubies and whether Rhaegar's rubies have some sort of supernatural element to them, allowing glamour. But I don't necessarily think it's needed for Rhaegar to be alive. I think kind of the point of the story is that Rhaegar's dead, is that he was this perfect guy that represented, some sort of like idealized future, and then it was just like crushed. But people's armor, like there's done quite a bit. I mean, you're talking about Renly's armor, Sandor's helm, Rattleshirt, the corpse at Astapor. I mean, at the battle of Ice, like Asha looks at Big Walder Frey and his armor and assumes that he's the leader of the army. Barristan Selmy being a mystery knight. I mean, it's Robert Strong, like putting on that armor, assuming that it's the Mountain, like him putting on armor and becoming a new identity. I mean, it just goes on and on. I'm sure I'm missing a whole bunch actually, but yes, like there's so many instances of people using armor to be somebody else. So it's not that the idea of Rhaegar being somebody else or glamored comes from nowhere. Like, I admit that like it's all over the place in Ice and Fire that people are hidden in other people's armor. Like that's just a fact. It's true. So it's not like it would surprise me if Rhaegar wasn't Rhaegar on the Trident, but I don't necessarily think it's necessary. What can Darkstar's big twist be? Has to be one. That's the big question. Like, we're given so little on the Dane's backstory that I kind of wanted to leave it open to see what other people's ideas were on what's going on with House Dane. There's of course like big ideas about House Dane with the Sword of the Morning and knowing about the others and stuff like that. And then there's like, I've gotten people's ideas that are also very small and grounded. One is about it doesn't really have to do with Darkstar, but it has to do with the Danes, that in A Clash of Kings, Tyrion promises Doran, along with the marriage of Myrcella, he promises them some marcher fiefs, some marcher castles. And of course, the big castle on the march, in the Dornish marches, the first one you go across to the Stormlands is Blackhaven, which is Beric Dondarrion's castle. And Beric Dondarrion was, betrothed to a Dane and had the Lord of Starfall, Ned Dane, as his squire / ward. So if you're talking about, the Martells being given Blackhaven land, either the entire Blackhaven castle or at least just a part of their land, perhaps like another castle that was part of Blackhaven. Um, it would upset the Danes because that was going to be like lands and income for Beric Dondarrion and Beric Dondarrion's wife, who was future wife, who was going to be a Dane. And if you're gonna start taking stuff from the Blackhavens, like from the Dondarrions, like they have Ned in their custody. They can do anything they want with them, supposedly. I mean, we don't actually know where Ned is. We don't even know if for sure if Beric Dondarrion is dead. So there is some grounded complexity in like why the Danes might not be on good terms with the Martells. But at the same time, like to an average reader, like, yeah, if you watch my channel, you know that like, yeah, I 100% think that Darkstar is innocent. But if you're a reader, you would think that Darkstar is guilty, and so you already have a big twist coming that, oh, Darkstar is innocent. Like then who the hell slashed Myrcella in the desert, and then, oh, Myrcella is not even Myrcella. There's so many twists that are actually like that are possible with the upcoming chapters. You know, Areo 1, Areo 2, because you know I was thinking about whether or not we wanted Areo to go to all the way to High Hermitage and face Darkstar in this first chapter. And it just seems like when I went through kind of the ideas, so when I was coming up with the outline, at first I was like, okay, so Areo Hotah, as a character, he needs to be, so far he's been a watcher in the background, not doing anything. And then at some point he needs to become actualized and become a real character. And it's like, well, this early seems to be like, and so originally my outline was him killing Obara Sand and saving Balon Swann. But then I was like, that's a little early. You know, it's a little early for his transformation. And frankly, it's just so much a bigger punch in the gut to have him let Balon Swann die. So like, if you're gonna, you know, I figured that if there's gonna be a change for Areo, that it would happen later, that it's a little too early. So we have to let Balon die. And then it would be like the next chapter or the chapter after that, further down the line, that Areo makes some sort of like big change, you know. And so, you know, I'm not sure when. So like I'd put the, you know, obviously people can write whatever they want in the submission, and if it works, it works. But you know, I was kind of envisioning running into Darkstar later on in the next chapter or something. But there's a lot of twists that can happen. But you know, these big twists, there's a lot of twists. I mean, we have no real idea like why Arianne chose Darkstar to be part of her party. What's the Danes? What's up with the Danes? Like, Ashara, everything. So who knows? Let's see. Will the Winds of Winter come out this winter? No, it's not coming out ever. The Winds of Winter is not coming out ever. Certainly not this winter. I'm sorry, but it's not coming out ever. But certainly not this winter. I mean, if you're going to think like, maybe is there a chance that like it would come out like in 2024? Maybe like a 1%, but no, I don't think. I mean, especially if House of the Dragon does really well, or well enough that it has another season and he's got to produce like supporting material. No. And he's going to be going to parties and talking to producers, and they green light a Dunkin' Eggs series and stuff like that. No, it's just not happening. But certainly not anytime soon. Now, if all of this fails and they don't green light anything, like House of the Dragon, which I don't think House of the Dragon is going to bomb, but let's say House of the Dragon does, you know, disappointing numbers, you know, like I would say has a kind of Westworld. And keep in mind, Westworld was considered disappointing with its numbers, and it still is getting it's still on its fourth season. Like, let's say House of the Dragon has disappointing numbers, and they renew it for a second season, but they don't greenlight anything else. then maybe I would see like a chance for Winds of Winter coming in like 2024 or something. But it would take something. It would take a future like that. Um, um, I think Howland Reed walked into Dane and killed himself, which is why the Tower of Joy is traumatic and secretive. Ned felt uncomfortable, and Howland Reed was ashamed. Howland Reed must have also played a role in sending his kids to Bran. Well, that's it's a that's a toughie. I mean, I think that humans working into humans is a very rare thing. I think Bran is very special, and I don't think other people are doing it. We're talking about like when we have the second most powerful telepath in the world is Varamir Sixskins, and he can't do it. And this is a guy who's warging six things at once. He's being awesome, and he can't do it. So I don't think anybody else can do it. I think the whole point is that Bran is the best of the best of the best, even better than Varamir Sixskins, who can do six who can work six people at once. That Bran is the only person that can warg another human being, and he doesn't even do it very successfully, right? Like takes a he fries somebody's brain, and then once he's a simpleton, he can warg him. But so even then, it's like you know he can't do it too much. So I think yeah, I think Brad is the only person that's warring other human beings. Um, Save Tom and save the kittens. Maybe we'll see. It's tough. Like I mean, does Tommen need to die? I mean, if we're ever going to see Cersei on the throne, Tommen kind of needs to die, which is a sad thing because poor little Tommen, poor Tommen. The tourney was fixed like an Olympic figure skating contest. I think worse so. But yeah, I mean, we don't actually know the order of things, but if we're going with the Elaine sample chapter and everything that's hinted in that as how Harrenhal tourney went, yeah, I think that Rhaegar just paid some people to lose to him because there's no reason he should be winning that tourney. There's no reason. He wasn't that good. Everyone knows he wasn't that good. You know. Um, let's see thoughts on him. The Euron thing. Um, I mean, I suppose you got to the first initial thing is that it's Bloodraven, right? And then, but then this is back in my days of Bloodraven planned it all kind of idea. But then is this idea of okay, well, does time traveling Bran have an effect on things? But this is all before time traveling Bran is even born. So I'm trying to think of yeah, because Euron got to look up Euron's age and when he received that vision. Um, let's look that up because he said he was a boy, right? It says hmm. Man, the wiki doesn't even say when he got his visions. That means I gotta search the fly comment because he says like, oh, what if we all could fly? But let's see what that's in the Reaver chapter. And how much, let's see. Perhaps we can fly, else we know. No man has ever tried unless he dares to leap. Um, what do we got? Does he only say like when I was a boy? When I was a boy, I dreamt I could fly. Well, when do you consider yourself a boy? Like 15 would probably be the latest in the Ice and Fire universe. And Euron is let's see. They say here that at At the youngest, he's 32. At youngest, he's about 32 or 33. So if he's 15, nah. Yeah, that would be like if he's a boy, it's well after born or well before Bran is born, which makes me think it's not a time traveling Bran and maybe Bloodraven. But it's interesting. It's interesting this idea of him flying. Um, and then a lot of people have this idea that okay, time traveling Bran is actually doing stuff like all over the place before his own birth. Influencing Bran the Builder and all sorts of stuff. So I don't know. But it's something that doesn't make too much sense. Um, but yeah, I mean, my guess is just Bloodraven trying to cause, or the Children of the Forest trying to cause chaos south of the Wall so that they can invade. Um, uh, Shay could be my sand snake. There's a theory. I think it's Order of the Green Hand that says that Sarella is secretly Shay, which I don't buy into. Just only because Sarella, I think, is very clearly Sarella because she's based on a character from Windhaven who is a really good student at their academy for flyers. And she's from the south, and she has tan skin and everything. It's very clearly like Aleras. Sarella is Sarella, and so I don't think that Sarella is Shay. Um, since Darkstar is the placeholder for the 5 year gap, why do you think that he'd go from the brother from the banners to Dorne? So this is a big jump. Okay, people say this a lot, oh, Darkstar is the placeholder for the. First of all, the 5 year gap. Okay, we got to talk about the 5 year gap, which is talked about way too much in the fandom. Okay, so originally when George was ending a Storm of Swords and beginning a Feast for Crows. Right? At the time, I think it was going to be A Dance with Dragons, but he hadn't changed the name yet. So he's beginning the next book. He's beginning book 4. He comes up with this. He thinks that he's going to advance all of the characters 5 years. And this would, in effect, like when you look at, say, where Dany ended, she's ruling Marine. We could have her rule Marine for 5 years and then be sick of it at the very beginning of A Dance with Dragons and then leave. Arya could be training at the House of Black and White for 5 years and have all these abilities. Jon could be Lord Commander for 5 years and have all this experience. And so this was the original kind of idea. However, George, in the meantime, decided to write all of these Dornish and Ironborn stories and expand on them. And then he was thinking about like Tyrion's travels and what is Tyrion going to be doing for 5 years. And so he kind of decided that, nah, this 5 year gap, just isn't working out. So he cuts it. But the thing is, he cuts it very, very early. He cuts it within the first 6 months of writing A Feast for Crows. And keep in mind that he writes A Feast for Crows it takes him 6 years to write that book. So very early in the process, he's cut the 5 year gap and is moving on. So now the question is like Ned fucking Dane, this random character that, like I said, I don't even know if he's thought about everything that's happening with the Danes yet or figured it out because he hasn't revealed anything about them. But the idea that like Darkstar is Ned Dane is a huge jump. That's a huge jump. Like, why would it just I don't like, other than them having the last name Dane, I just don't see how like anyone could connect those two characters. Like Darkstar has a personality that's completely different from Ned Dane. Why would Ned Dane be part of Ariana's like queen making adventures? Like originally with a 5 year gap, those queen making adventures wouldn't necessarily even be there. It's just all off. Like so this like fan theory that that they're the same person. I just don't see the evidence for it. And so to like start with that precedent, that starting point, that since Darkstar is the placeholder for Ned Dane, I don't accept that. Like, you've got to give me more than the fact that they're just two people with the last name Dane. And the 5-year gap is not as important as people make out. But why he? But if we're going just with the second half, and I'll give the second half, like, okay, maybe Ned Dane would be brought back into the fold, considering he's the Lord of Starfall, and he would or the heir to Starfall, and Starfall is eventually going to be part of the story. I mean, the big thing is on why he would leave the Brotherhood Without Banners is that it was taken over by Lady Stoneheart, and Lady Stoneheart is psychotic, vengeance-filled character, and that it would not align with what he was doing, which is what we see in the book. Like, Ned Dane is not with Lady Stoneheart. There clearly was a split. I mean, the split is only based on the A Feast for Crows appendix, but there was clearly a split in the Brotherhood Without Banners, and a certain group of them have gone off into another faction because they didn't like Lady Stoneheart. But that's it's funny. There are these little things that like people know that get me riled up, and one of them is just like bringing up the 5-year gap. I'm like, the 5-year gap's not that important. Like, it's not that important. Everybody, like, there's so much analysis of that 5-year gap, which is like a few months of George's life that he wasted. Let's see here. Rewatched the Faceless Men vids today. Do you ever explain how Aegon supporters would know that Bloodraven is still alive? He's been missing for a long time. I would guess that they would know that Bloodraven is still alive based on his dream sending kind of abilities and how he's been interfering with people. That would be where I would go with it. But yeah, the or at least that he has some sort. They would at least know that he has a faction of supporters that need to be dealt with, whether it be just the Children of the Forest or whatever. But this is based on this. So on a background to this, I was trying to come up with like why. Okay, we've set up that we have this Bloodraven versus Bittersteel dynamic that's happening in the story. This is clearly just kind of there. Like, we've got the Golden Skull of Bittersteel leading the Golden Company, and he's paralleled with Bloodraven all over the place. For example, at the Battle of Ice, you've got Mor's Umber's head being carried in on a werewood spear with one eye, and all of these sorts of things. Like, this is all very, very, very much paralleled. So, is this a real life battle that's going to happen on the ground? A Bloodraven versus Bittersteel rematch in some sense of Blackfires versus non-Blackfires. And, I would say that there's a lot of evidence that it is happening that way. So, and then on a completely kind of separate thing, like the idea of like who was the owner of the mystery coin that both Arya finds at the House of Black and White and that Paige is given in Old Town. And both of them kind of don't know who the king is on the coin, which means that that's something from the Mystery Night where Dunk finds a coin and you can't figure out the king on it. And then it turns out to be Daemon Blackfire. And he's like, oh, that's why he didn't recognize the king. So, from those 2 points, you're like, okay, why are we getting this odd Daemon Blackfire reference in Old Town and with Arya at the House of Black and White? Unless the Blackfires have hired the Faceless Men in some respect. And so now it's like, okay, well, who would the Blackfires want to kill in Westeros? And, it was just kind of my fun headcanon idea that, okay, this is the reason that Jaqen H'ghar, figuring out what Jaqen H'ghar was doing in the Black Cells. Like, did he want to go to the Wall? Why was he in the Black Cells? Why is he in Old Town. Who is he looking for? If he's looking for someone with that glass candle, and it was just kind of this idea that he was going after Bloodraven. But yeah, how would they know he's alive? I guess it would just be they got some visions and they of something. He was messing with people's minds and giving them dreams, and they kind of sensed that he was still causing trouble out there. Because we know that Bloodraven or somebody, I assume it was Bloodraven, was giving Daemon Blackfire the second dreams, and those dreams led him straight to disaster. It led him to him believing that he was gonna somehow hatch a dragon and at the Butterwell wedding and take over, and it was a big flop, and you realize his dreams were led him to failure. And so it may be that the Blackfires kind of realize, well, we're still getting these shitty dreams. I bet that Bloodraven is still causing trouble or something like that. That'd be my guess. But I admit this is way in tinfoil land. Like, this is way like abstract kind of stuff. Oh man, Sir Pounce better live. Yeah, maybe Sir Pounce could make it all the way until the end. That'd be something. That'd be nice. That'd be nice. I think Sir Pounce should make it until the end, unless he gets pregnant and someone has to cut him open to see his babies. Oh, I thought Gary and Lannister. This was you thought Gary and Lannister was him in one of your videos. I mean, that'd be something. I have to rethink. It's been many, many years since I did Alliances of Iron, so I have to think that kind of situation. Because we kind of do know that the Shrouded Lord can send dreams, and because Tyrion was going to receive a big dream from the Shrouded Lord. So yeah, maybe. I mean, it's whether or not the Shrouded Lord is really going to be brought into the story, or if he was just going to be another kind of House of Black and White stand-in metaphor for the weirwood net, just in a different location. Like the House of the Undying is just kind of a stand-in for, metaphorically, for the weirwood net. Like they're a hive mind of warlocks whose memories go into their collective, and they try to absorb Dany in it, and they give her visions, just in the same way that the weirwood net is a collection of hive mind that's trying to absorb Bran, who sends him visions. And Dany destroys the House of the Undying, and it's just supposed to be a parallel. Now, is Tyrion's trip supposed to be just some sort of another parallel, like, oh, he's heading into a hive mind kind of situation, or is it is it going to be something important? I don't know. So I have to relook at that. A lot of times I lose track of my ideas. I think Darkstar hates being named for a high tower. Well, we don't know if Darkstar hates the high towers, and we don't really know if he's named for Gerald Hightower or not. It may just be that he's got the name Gerald, so we're not sure. So, but it'd be interesting. Growing sour, the perfect words for House Lemongate. In regard, I'm trying to think of House Dalt's. Does House Dalt of the Lemonwood have their name? Has their house words been revealed? Let's see here. House Dalt. We do not know their words. Oh, could be growing sour. There are 7 more secret sand snakes. That would be pretty funny. That would be pretty funny. I don't even know if there's any use for three of the eight. But that'd be funny if they were. I mean, my so prior to the show coming out, like I would have had no clue that Eulalia Sand um, might be some sort of problem. And then the Ariana sample chapter came out, and Elia Sand is stuck in that chapter clearly as a spy, clearly as a spy. And so then you look at like where the other sand snakes are located, and like one is at Sunspear, one's at the uh, Water Gardens, and then one is going to Hellhold. And the excuse that Ellaria has is, oh, I've got to spread my sand snakes out so that they'll be safe. And just like, really, you're going to send one of them straight into a battle, like, and that's the safest for your sand snake to be? Sure, Ellaria, sure, Ellaria. So it actually made me think like, oh gosh, like maybe I was wrong this entire time. And I don't think anybody else like came up with the idea that Ellaria was a player until the show and the sample chapter came out. And so I'm like, oh, maybe like I don't like it because I think like the Dorn plot is already really, really complicated. And to have Ellaria like, come in and do what she did in the show would be a little nuts. But I have to admit, like her sending spies off in four different locations makes me wonder if the show plot wasn't actually like part of the book plot. But um there's no chance Jon isn't Ned's son with a Dane. No one ever talks about how important the sword Dawn is. The sword has some kind of power. George said so. Um yeah, so the Ned plus Ashara, I've talked about this before. Ned plus Ashara equaling Jon. The only reason I don't think this is the way is that it's the very first combination that's given to us. It's what Catelyn believes. She believes that Ashara Dane and Ned are the parents of Jon. Um, and so that's kind of why I think it's not the case, because even in his original outline, George says, "Oh, when Jon's parentage is discovered, this and this and this will change." And the main thing about Jon's parentage is that he'll discover that he's not that he's able to actually be with Arya. And so in the original outline, Jon and Arya were supposed to be a thing, right? They're the ones that actually have this like, sexual tension or like relationship or something. And it would be okay if they were cousins, but it wouldn't be okay if they were siblings or half siblings. So at least in the very beginning, George was thinking that they were not going to be, that Ned is not part of the equation. And so, for a long time, I was saying, okay, well, what about Brandon and Ashara? That kind of works. Like, where everybody's searching for Jon's true mother, assuming that Ned is the father. But in fact, we all knew the mother, and it was the father, the thing that was switched. And then, of course, with R plus L equals J, it's that both parents are switched. But so I don't know if I see that, just because it's the very first thing offered is that Ned and Ashara are the parents. And according to the outline, it needs to be somewhat okay for him to get with Arya, and so he kind of needs to not be her half sibling, and be a cousin rather than a. And so now it's true that with the Sword of the Morning, they've set this up as like this massively important sword. I admit, like, and if it were Brandon and Ashara, he could be Sword of the Morning or whatever. I don't know who else would be Sword of the Morning that we'd care. Like, what other character is there that would have the opportunity to wield that sword that we would care about? Areo Hotah. Like what? Like I'm trying to come up with anybody that like, and of course, especially if it's like point of view where they can like look at the blade and all these sorts of things. I mean, maybe Areo Hotah. Let's write that fan fiction. Areo Hotah becomes sort of the morning. We never, we never know. We never know. But you know, not much, not much time in the story. I'll say that. And there's so little written about House Dane. I am looking forward to everybody's ideas about House Dane because House Dane's a big mystery to me too because George has written nothing about it. Um, cool false question. Gladys asked in the video. Wanted to know what you thought of it. Is time traveling Bran hodering Patchface? Love the fanfic. Um, it's certain. Trying to think of the timing on that one too. I think what he's been around since Stefan Baratheon died, so I want to say that happened well before Bran's birth as well. So I'm a little reluctant to say that it was Bran, but it's certainly possible that somebody has thrown visions his way. I think I was actually thinking of Patchface a little bit over the past week. Shower thoughts, and I was like, I'm like gonna give away like one of the ideas I had is that we kind of forget that Patchface exists. He's just kind of in a background character that everyone's just kind of he'll say something and then we immediately started ignoring him again. But I do kind of think it would be cool that if somebody tries to burn Shireen, if he just freaking kills, like she just starts slaughtering people. He's like, do not touch Shireen. Like Melisandre like tries to bring off like Shireen, and Patchface just grabs her by the throat and like squeezes the life out of her, and you're like, holy shit, where did that come from? Because she did get that vision that Patchface was surrounded by skulls, like she's seeing her own death and it's Patchface, because man, if I were Patchface, like I wouldn't care about much in the world, but I'd care about Shireen, and we kind of forget that he's there as this like possible protector of Shireen that no one is thinking of, and he's capable of just slaughtering people right and left. What would be the name of the Quentyn chapter? Um, the dutiful son, the burned prince, the burned suitor, the dragon thief. Well, you'd want something that would at least keep his identity hidden for most of the chapter, because you got to remember like how Reek was. It's going to be set up kind of parallel to Reek, right? So you've got Reek, and you're reading Reek, and you're like, who is this? Who is this? And then eventually, it's kind of figured out. You figure out that this is Theon. So, with with Quentyn, it would be a situation where he's looking down on he's in this pyramid, abandoned pyramid. He's looking down on the streets of Marine and he's seeing what's going on. Likely the Shave Pate taking over or something like that with the brazen beasts. And then you're wondering who is this character, and then he starts describing the immense pain he's in or his burns or whatever, and then you kind of figure out that it's Quentyn. So it'd have to be something that at least hides it a little bit. Like I think burned prince is a little too revealing, but if it's just the burned man, maybe or something else, or the forgotten son. It's got to be something. It's got to be something that at least allows you to go a few pages, to allow a reveal. But I haven't come up with it too much. The burned frog, maybe. Um, Maybe Darkstar knows that the Martells plotted to kill Rhaegar or Lyanna before the war unfolded. Yeah, I mean, it could be that in general, like Darkstar knows something about the Tower of Joy, and things like that, and you've got to figure how it would really screw up uh, Doran's plans, you know. Um, Doran is just getting all of his kids and nieces killed. He must be a secret Tyrell. Well, I mean, besides Quentyn, he hasn't gotten anybody killed yet, right? So, I mean, you could say his brother. He got his brother killed, you know. Okay, so his brother and maybe his son. But you gotta man, these are pieces to be sacrificed. You know, this is chess. This is Scythe. So he's got certain pieces that he's going to sacrifice for a certain game. And so, you know, that's kind of how the whole thing. So, um, some people will really think that just okay, the big explanation is that Doran's an idiot, and you know, there's nothing to the Dorna story. And I'm just like, well, that's a big letdown. I mean, George has been spending the past, I mean, what the Storm of Swords came out in 1999. Everybody wants the sequel to A Storm of Swords, and it's like, well, it's been 20 years. You think he's just been wasting it? Like, you think that this 20 years diversion of Ironborn and Dornish is you know, for nothing? It's like, well, maybe because he doesn't know how to finish the story. But I you know, I just don't believe that he would create this entire plot line for no reason. You know, waste all of these chapters. Um, Rewatched the Ariana the Winds of Winter chapter, and I was wondering if you had any thoughts on how the Battle of Steel will go. Um, yeah, the Battle of Ager Falnius, etc. I mean, essentially, and I think I outlined it in my prepping for winter kind of thing. I think that we've got missing elephants and a lot of missing Golden Company, and we know they're not west of Storm's End, so they're kind of going to be to the right of Storm's End, you know, and so landing on that front, and so we know that like coming into the battle, Jon Connington can pincer move and attack from both sides. We also know that Storm's End is on a cliff, and so you could probably have these elephants scare everybody and have people run off cliffs, you know, a cliff. You know, the you're bringing up the battle of Ager Fallerness, which I brought up, which is, you know, placing burning sticks on cows to create distraction and light, and so people get panicked and horses get panicked and things like that. So I think that there's a lot of room for that, for having using the environment and using the position of their forces to get rid of a lot of the Tyrell forces. I also think that like there's some sort of false flag that's been set up, that the Golden Company people are going to think that, oh, with the Baratheon banner limp, the Golden Company already has Storm's End, when they don't, and they're going to use that to their advantage. Like everybody's going to be like, oh my gosh, they've conquered Storm's End. And it's like, no, we haven't. But then after, you know, the win in the field, maybe there'd be some sort of surrender or something from the people inside. I mean, I think the person running Storm's End right now is what, Elwood Meadows? I'm trying to think who's controlling Storm's End at the moment. Yeah, Elwood Meadows. Elwood Meadows is the seneschal of Storm's End. So, you know, we just kind of need Grassfield Keep to turn or be conquered, and then his family would be hostages, and you could get Elwood Meadows to turn. But yeah, so I think that more or less that's like the trick that's going on, is they're going to tell everybody that Storm's End is already conquered. They're going to use this the environment, the cliff, the elephants to knock people off, you know, distraction, get House Meadows on board, and then have Elwood Meadows surrender, and it'll be some sort of trick like that is my guess. But, you know, I don't know when we're going to do that chapter. Maybe soon. I don't know. I have to read this. Sword of the Morning is morning wood. I would say that this is completely George R. R. Martin humor. Like that's completely something he probably thought of, and um, you know, that's what you think of in the shower. We just say that shower thoughts. What I really think of I usually take, I'm usually like cleaning my young toddler son in the shower. So I'm usually thinking of trying to get him not to like squirm around and stuff like that. That's what I'm really thinking about is cleaning a toddler. So that's my real shower thoughts. As weird as that sounds. But, um, well, this is interesting. Jon is 0% Valyrian. Val and Ned Dane aren't. Hmm. So this is so there are some ideas that, but the thing is, okay, so let's see, if Jon is just a Stark, um which is completely fine. You know, Starks have like warging abilities, which is the same as being a Valyrian anyway, right? It's just telepathic gift, right? So Jon is 0% Valyrian. Say he's Wyla, or there's Starkcest going on, and it's really Ned and Lyanna. Um, and so then um, I mean, I guess it doesn't change the story too much. You'd have no right to the Sword of the Morning. So if we're talking about like Val and um, Ned D aren't, but I don't know how you get Val and Ned Dane together. That would be that's a pairing from across the map that I wouldn't see happening. I mean, there's a chance that Ned Dane is as far north as the neck, because I think there's some discussion of the Brotherhood without banners disappearing into the neck. So maybe you could get Ned Dane, if you took an entire book for him to travel across the wintry north, you could get him to the wall for Val at some point. I'm not quite sure what's being asked here. Let's see. Um, the coins Arya finds are coins of Rob. They are silver coins from the north. Edric Storm gave him before he left, and didn't go to Lice because no one goes to their. The coins Arya finds are coins of Rob. They are silver coins from the north. Edric Storm gave to him before he left, and he didn't go to Lice because no one goes to their place. Um, that's a toughie. I think well, first off, I think Arya actually says that they're dragons. Um, I have to, I'll have to look that up. Hold on a second. Maybe. Well, let me recheck. I want to say that this is in the blind. It's going to be in the blind girl chapter, yeah. And then I first search dragons, and then yeah. So it says the old woman had no purse, no wealth, but for a ring on her finger. The handsome man she found four golden dragons out of Westeros. She was running the ball of her thumb across the most worn of them, trying to decide which king it showed. So they're definitely golden dragons. She can't figure out what king because they're going to be they're worn. So you kind of say, okay, well, they're definitely not Robert, because she would know what those felt like, and probably not Ares either. Like those are going to be your most common, kings, and they're going to be, so and they're well worn, which, I mean, I don't know how long it takes for a gold coin to get worn. I mean, usually high denomination coins aren't worn as much as low denomination coins. So like pennies get worn more than silver dollars, for example, or more than quarters. So, you know, it's maybe it's a king from way far back, but I think the clue is that it's Daemon Blackfire. But they're definitely now the other thing is Edric Storm in Lice? Well, you know, all we know is what the appendix kind of says. So, in fact, did he go to Volantis? I'm trying to remember where Edric actually ended up. And it was new information on him in the appendix, if I recall, on like who actually went with him. I want to say, no, it says he's in Lice. You're right. Okay, with his guardians and protectors. All right, so he's in Lice according to the appendix. We have no idea. Appendices can be wrong, but the Patchface is warged by the Shrouded Lord. Maybe. Uh, let's see here. Let's Patchface bloodied lips punch defending Shireen. Yeah, I mean, I just think it'd be kind of like, because I think there's some moments where Patchface does like get a really serious look on his face, um, of being troubled, like when he's not being a fool, and like, and so you kind of think that maybe he's not a complete idiot. Maybe he's got some other things going on. But this is kind of the rule of thumb with fools. We kind of always wonder if like the fool knows more than he does. I mean, people say that about Moonboy a lot. That Moonboy is actually just completely a genius, and he's just been sitting back, like pretending to be an idiot the entire time. Um, is Bran's final line to Jon in the show a hint to book readers that Bran has been in full control of the Jon story? Um, the final line to Jon, I forget what his final line to Jon is, but I thought though that just the fact that at the council he says, "Why do you think I came all this way?" made a lot of people think like, oh, like he planned all of this kind of stuff. Um, so I think there was definitely a hint in the show that Bran planned it all, and that this was all his kind of his doing. They kind of shied away from it in a time travel sense, but I think that um, um, you know, but I'm forgetting, if he had a message, what his message to like on the docks was. But somebody will have to remind me of that. The Danes aren't Valyrian. George R. R. Martin has already said that. Huh? I didn't know that he said that, um, there's some weird things about um, Westeros's past. Like, were there dragons in Westeros way back in the day? One would think that there would have had to been for them to be the Jonquil and Florian story. And if so, like who was flying dragons back in the day? Because we're talking about pre-Valerian Empire kind of stuff. Um, so yeah, there's a real question about you know, what's really the story here, and where the Danes come from, and why do they have silver hair and look different, or at least why does Darkstar have silver hair and look different? Make sure I don't miss anything. Jon will have to marry Lady Stoneheart. Now, there is there is the whole there's some fan theories like about Jon and Catelyn having like a secret thing, like um and that it's just not mentioned that they were actually sleeping together, and that was one of the reasons she hated him and wanted him out, and she was pretending to be angry the entire time because she was actually sleeping with Jon. It would be pretty crazy. Make a mystery parents tourney bracket in a Song of Ice and Fire. Huh. That would be. I'll have to think about this one. Because I don't know if I worry about the mystery parents as much as some people do. But I'm trying to think of like how many people do we really worry about their lineage from besides Jon and Dany? I mean, some people worry about Sweet Robin's background. I guess people worry about um, Mira Reed's background, for instance. We don't know about her mother too much. But mystery who Darkstar's parents are. Maybe I have to think about this. I have to think about this tourney bracket idea. Um, we forgot everything from the last two seasons. This is Bran. This is Bran. His final. Bran's final line to Jon on the docks was "Suck it, loser," as I recall. He goes, "Suck it, loser! Ha ha! I'm the king. Have fun on the wall, bitch." Yeah, that would have been an interesting way to end the show. Dane's come from the great empire of the Dawn. Maybe. Um, what's the deal with Lung? I don't think anything's the deal with Lung. I think that George R. R. Martin has put no time into thinking about Lung, and he just kind of like put some crap out. He crapped some stuff out in the Worlds of Ice and Fire, and then sent it to publish. But I think they're gonna be exploring a lot of ET and stuff in some sort of animated series if it gets approved. So the animated might be cheaper than other series, so why not do the animated one? So um let's see here. Can we do a poll on things we want for the fan fiction? Um, Unfortunately, with the what people want is not necessarily what people need in the story, right? Like, I think what a lot of people want for like take in my outline with like Balon Swann dying, like spoilers, everybody. No one wants Balon Swann to die. But we need Balon Swann to die. Like, he needs to die for the growth of Areo Hotah and for that gut punch. He needs to be that a representation of honor that Areo Hotah is letting escape and die because of his duty. Like, no one wants it, but it's what we need. It's what we need. So I don't know. I mean, it's not like I don't hear people's ideas and say, some people say, no, this isn't a great idea. This is a better idea. And it's, we kind of hear that kind of stuff and go, oh, okay. That works better. It's not like my mind can't be changed on stuff, but, I don't know if I would ever go with what the majority wants. Right. Cause I think, like, say you did Game of Thrones that way. Jon would have fought the Night King in a big, like, battle at the end. And I don't think that would have necessarily been a great ending either. I'm not saying that Arya killing the Night King is anything great, because it's not. But I don't think Jon having a final battle with him would necessarily be the ending people would need anyway. Because it's not how George's writing is. It's not, it's always the unexpected but fitting kind of ending. George said nobody can take a Dane holding Dawn. Huh. Well, that would be something. I mean, certainly Gerald Dane said that he, when people say, "Oh, Sword of the Morning, he was so great," and he's like, "No, he had a great sword." That he was kind of claiming that it was all his sword. I think. There's certainly an advantage to it. Though I think if you just give a random person a sword, doesn't mean they're necessarily gonna win. But it's supposedly just such a well balanced, light, perfect sword that it's gonna give you a huge advantage or something. So that'd be something to think about. I have to see this quote as well. Um, True democracy is dead. Was it ever alive? Uh, Mira Reed is Ashara Dane's stillborn daughter by Ned, sent and fostered with his best friend Howland Reed so he could be secretly um, raised young Griff, and Ned could be raised as a bastard. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think. Well, I definitely thought for a long time that some sort of baby swap happened at Starfall. Um, but the question is, what is it? What was the swap? Um, why would the Danes like Ned so much to name their son Ned? Um, how did it benefit them? Like some people are just like, oh, well, he returned that sword and everything was cool, and you're like, okay, sure, dude. Like if you honestly, if like somebody kills your son and then returns like your really great sword, like, are you going to name your kid after that person? I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's enough. So it's Mira Reed. Mira, I mean, I guess it's possible because I mean we're assuming that Howland went to Starfall along with Ned to drop off that sword. So could they pick up the stillborn daughter, and then I suppose it might. Some people might argue that Mira Reed is 1 year younger than needed to be, but maybe it probably it'd probably work out. And I think that fits the timeline enough. Um, so you should get ready for young Griff. Um, though I think it is a little early for Ashara Dane to be Lecepta Lemore though. But based on what Varys said, but maybe she had a different role before becoming a Septa. So I don't know. I mean, it could. It's a possibility. It's a possibility. Um, John apologizes and Bran tells him that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The line makes more sense for the books, not the show, to be honest. Oh, okay. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess that also just goes into the whole like Bran planned it all kind of idea, which makes sense. Um, it makes more sense with time traveling Bran and all of that. But um, you know, I time traveling Bran's plans. Like, yes, I had you stabbed and then resurrected, and I had your girlfriend killed and your other girlfriend killed. Um, and yeah, sorry about that. Oh, and you get to live like north of the wall. Oh, I also had our parents killed and um, our brother killed, and you're welcome. Like fucking Bran. Hoto's out to gain experience from killing Kingsguard and level up. Um, I mean, I suppose in a Dungeons and Dragons sense, right? Like you get the experience, even if someone in your party makes the kill. The experience is split up. So he would get the Kingsguard experience for killing Balon. I suppose so. If Faceless Men are after Bloodraven, will Pate be using Sam's Dark Descent with the candle, or be contributing force with his spiral down that road? I would imagine that Pate and Aleros are both in there using the candle with um, with Sam, and they're all kind of like taking turns. It'll be interesting um, to think about what Pate is like at the Citadel. Like, is he suddenly like a really great student and he has like 3 links of a Maester's chain now? Is he just like just going through the subjects really fast? And how is Sam doing? And things like that. It'd be interesting. And I don't know what Lazy Leo is the one that actually kind of gives me pause. Like, what is Lazy Leo going to be doing with himself? Who's Lazy Leo? Like, Lazy Leo is on whose side? But that's when we get to the Sam chapter, which may be happening sooner versus later. I mean, the one that, honestly, the two chapters I've thought about the most are probably Elaine and Sam lately on what's going on. Um, are we the runners following Forrest Gump? No, I wish, but the there's most of the writing of the background is on stuff is really from contributors. It's just kind of just the general outline of things is uh is where I come in. The Radio Westeros theorized the Dawn's blade equals a glass candle. Hmm. Hmm. Well, I mean, we're clearly told that a black candle is obsidian, right? Um, let's see here. What are meteors made of? I thought meteors are mostly iron, right? Um, oh no, meteoroids are made of silicon and oxygen, minerals called silicates, heavier metals like nickel and iron. Um, oh, it says it's mainly made of iron nickel metal with small amounts of sulfide carbon minerals. Um, I guess there's a difference between a meteorite and a meteoroid. Um, but I mean, I don't know. My big theory is that a glass candle is made of obsidian because obsidian is essentially silicon, and so they're mistaking silicon for obsidian. That they're looking at this giant um, computer chip technology thing that somebody had created, and they're looking at it going, well, it's black and it's shiny. That's clearly obsidian, when it's actually like a big computer chip. Um, Now, for that to happen, if we really believe that Dawn is a meteorite from space, um, then I can't see it being a glass candle. And I'm trying to think like, have we, how that would help? Like, does Dawn having the ability to see across the world and go into people's dreams like help people fight? Like it's such a different set of of abilities that I wouldn't think them to be related at all. um so that's an odd thing. I'd have to learn more about like. I don't want to dismiss it um outright just because I'm not sure what the full theory is, but I don't understand like why they would be related. Like one is something that allows you to see into like enhance yourself telepathically and see across the world and inside people's dreams. And the other is a really great sword that allows you to fight. And one is made of obsidian and the other is made of a meteorite. Um, I don't see the connection right now. So I don't know. Um, Mitochondrial DNA has alt to X link for wargs. All children inherit, only women pass on the trait. Varamir has no warg children. Cat is 100% Wentz gene. I definitely think that something like this is going on with genetics. Um, that now the question is whether it's all on the female versus a combination, which I think in my I'm thinking back to my Craster's Keep video where I talk about the genetics here, and I do think that it's X linked. I think Varamir Sixskins having no special children is a or at least no special sons is like evidence of this. Like he should have some sort of um, special daughters theoretically, but he actually says children. I wish he said daughters, but I think he actually, or I wish he said sons, but he actually says children. He has no special children, period. But of course, how does he know they're special unless they're raised in a very specific environment with dogs that help bring out telepathic abilities? But yeah, I definitely think that I definitely believe that the special genes are X-linked. Like that, this is why like characters like Rhaenyra and Rhaenys, the queen who never was, and Dreamfire Rhaena are prevented from being on the throne, so much. Now, I admit there's also characters like Daemon Targaryen who everybody's like, no, you can't be on, and Daemon Blackfire, where people are really gung ho against them being on the throne as well. So I'm not saying it's perfect, perfect kind of thing, but it does seem like something special with the women. Um, but could it be mitochondrial DNA? Maybe. I I I think it's some sort of X-link kind of thing. I've done a lot of weird Punnett squares about this, trying to figure it all out, but kind of explains it, because the only of course it is kind of lucky that it's lucky that Bran, Robb, and Rickon all got um, Catelyn's special genes. Unless Catelyn is super special and she was like double X, she had both genes, then everybody kind of gets it. Um, yeah. Okay, where are we? Do you think the Westerlands become more relevant in the next book? The Reach definitely will be, but the Westerlands have not been detailed yet. Yeah, no, I definitely think that the final books were moving more into um, Reach and Westerland territory. I think that if I were trying to think of like what would happen to Cersei, like she would have to either flee, because if Aegon takes the throne, she would have to flee to either back to the Westerlands or to Dorne. Um, and so the I definitely think that there would be exploration there. Plus, I think um, if the Vale army comes into the Riverlands, that they might make some strikes or something at the Westerlands, and um, or if everybody switched to um, Aegon has the Reach mostly, and a lot of the Riverlands that and the Stormlands, that maybe the next front of battle would be the Westerlands. Though it's not like they have that many forces left. The Lannisters. um, Will Areo kill Myrcella? I wouldn't want, if I were gonna think about it, I would say that like because Aerys Oakheart cared about Myrcella, and because we want Balon to care about Myrcella, that Areo's journey would to become the protector of Myrcella, realizing that these guys' mission will become his mission. That protecting children protecting this innocent girl is really the way to go, and that he needs to do that. That's at this point, that's kind of where I see Areo heading. Like he it's just really, now the big question of course is, where is Myrcella? And I kind of have some ideas on where she's hidden, but uh I guess I kind of see her being in Old Town, which would bring some characters together and stuff like that. I mean, George R. R. Martin was FG and stopped running, not UPG. Um, uh, what does FG? So, fuck girl? Is that what? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. FG is FG fuck girl? I don't know. I just. We know they all got her special genes because they're redheads. That's a really good point. That's a really good point actually. Um, but then again, Arya got the gene and she's not a redhead. But I suppose something Stark go over her. I don't know. But I mean, it's not that it's not possible with one X that they would all get it. I think the probability is 1 in 8, right? So it's not completely out of the ordinary, but it's um If obsidian is in Valyrian steel, how could Tywin melt down ice and make a new sword? I think this has to do with something about. I mean, steel has a certain amount of what? It's like carbon, and what happens to obsidian when we when it melts? I mean, in the show they just melted it down and reforged it, but let's see here. But we also don't know if like Valyrian steel actually has obsidian in it. But um, that's the assumption because Valyrian steel uh, might. I guess obsidian like Valyrian steel hasn't even killed any White Walkers in the book yet, right? So we actually don't even know. We don't even have a confirmation that Valyrian steel has obsidian in it. But assuming it does, huh? Can you melt obsidian? Right? Can you cast obsidian? It just kind of becomes small particles, apparently. Um, you could take. It seems very complicated because glasses don't really melt like metal or rock and become fluid as the temperature rises. Um, it also another thing to think about is that just because just because um, ice was recast doesn't mean it actually has been recast effectively, right? Like it could actually be like the obsidian maybe went somewhere else and it just got recast from the same metal and it no longer has that ability anymore. There's so many things that we don't know about. Like, yeah, they made them into two new swords. It's true, but is it still going to have that special ability to So we one have to assume that like one Valyrian steel contains obsidian, two that Valyrian steel can kill another, and three that um, that Oathkeeper and Widow's Wail still have that ability after being recast. All of those things are kind of unknowns. That would be really fucking heartbreaking if like somebody goes up north with and like tries to strike an other with Oathkeeper and it doesn't fucking work and they get killed. That's hard. Oh god, that's quite an idea. Which POVs would cross in your project? I'm trying to think about it. I mean, down the line, a lot of them, but I mean, we kind of think what Tyrion and Dany, right? Eventually, um, Areo Hotah and Sam, maybe because they're getting pretty close. Obviously, Ariana, and JonCon. That's an obvious one. Um, maybe I mean Theon and Ash are together like currently. Maybe they'll cross with Davos. Um, Jamie and Brienne are currently together, so those two. Um, so there's quite a few. Um, so it's and then later on, a lot more crossing can happen. I mean, it's hard to, right now we think of the point of views being all spread out, but we forget that like all of the point of views were like seven of the eight original point of views were all in Winterfell at the same time. So, and I guess it was like if we go even to future point of views, like Jamie and Cersei were there, and all sorts of people. So that's it. um, lava, obsidian is lava. Yeah, obsidian is Yeah, more or less fast cooled lava. There's something that has to do with the cooling speed that like creates it. But yeah, it's essentially just silicon. Obsidian does not cast. Yeah, I've heard that when the series came out. But um yeah, I mean it's interesting. I mean, Tabho Mott could have just like melted out the regular metal and then told they like, here you go, here's your Valyrian steel. It's actually not Valyrian steel at all. Steel isn't cast; it's folded. Oh, that's true. Yeah, I don't, yeah, man. That's very true. So maybe, um, the oh, any surprising family connections? How Sam and Shireen are cousins. Um, this is a very subtle little thing that George put in the book that hardly anybody ever talks about. But when Sam is at the wall and he hears about um, his own grandfather getting killed, and he doesn't know that he's talking about his own grandfather. This is when Florent is sacrificed to bring winds and to bring Stannis north, and it's Sam that's like that hears about this story, and he doesn't even know like the second part of it that oh actually that was your own grandfather, which is really kind of harsh situation, thing to think about. And it's one of those super subtle things because like it's weird how George will be like super subtle and then not subtle at all at other points. But it's but that is kind of really neat that Sam and Shireen are actually cousins, and uh his own grandfather was killed to bring Stannis north. Um, in the show, most Valyrians don't kill anything. I think. I mean, John's blade kills a couple others, and then obviously the Valyrian dagger at the end are the big ones, that are important. But I'm trying to think if I see anybody else like. Though I think they're using Valyrian steel in the show can kill whites as well. So maybe like Jorah. Jorah was killing some people here. I like how PJ pronounces lung as lung. Well, yeah, that's how it's pronounced in Chinese. So it's when I see Leng, I'm gonna say lung because that's how it's pronounced. Like uh, but I think that's why. But I guess some people call it Lang or something. I just couldn't imagine seeing Leng and pronouncing it Lang. When it's long. Um, there's some funny things about pronunciations. Like there's someone I work with the with the surname YU, and you know I always pronounce it like you, and everybody else is like whenever I do that, people always like look at me and they're like, "You mean you?" And I'm like, if you want, I'm just like, just you. Um, another weird one is I've probably told this story before, but way back in the day, I I had to meet somebody, and her first name was Luz, Luz, which is the Spanish for light, which is a fairly common woman's name in Spanish. And I didn't know what she looked like, and I was supposed to meet her at this welcome center. And I remember I was like, okay, and I'm sitting there, and I'm waiting and I'm waiting, and I see a woman come in, and she looks Hispanic, and so I walk up to her and I'm like, oh hi, are you Luce? And she's like, no. And then later I'm like, oh wait, did I just walk up to a woman and ask her if she's loose? Like most, but because of this, almost everybody called this woman Luz because I think they thought it was weird to be calling a woman loose, but it's kind of weird things. um, how's been the transition to Taipei? It's been good. It's been been more interesting than being in America. My days in America we're getting kind of um repetitive, and I just didn't like everything kind of being repetitive. So it's yeah. The oh, this is interesting. Yeah, I worked with someone named Ewan Wen, win win, so to speak. Yeah, so the Vietnamese NG is such a weird um, sound. So like people that don't know, like Vietnamese will use a lot of sounds that we finish words with to start words. So like the NG, like thing, like an NG together, they can start something. So like they can the name I guess in Vietnamese is Nguyen, and like having that like gulpy Nguyen to start doesn't translate over. And obviously, like in America, if you started calling people when like everyone would look at you like, what are you doing? So a lot of Vietnamese Americans like don't know which way to go with like how they pronounce their this last name, which is pretty common. Do you just say Win or do you say Nugent? Which I know a lot of people that say, oh, no, my name's Nugent. You know, um, but like my last name, you know, should be pronounced Jacobs, but like you know, many generations have passed and we're Jacobs. So it just things happen over time with pronunciation. Uh, I don't think so. Yeah, it'll be. I mean, we won't live to see it, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see like how everybody pronounces each other's surnames in a couple generations. Because you don't know, you don't know. You know, Dothraki. George R. R. Martin doesn't say Dothraki, but says Dothraki. Um, yeah. Uh, do you know if China is as bad as we see on TV with Shanghai situation? I actually have some friends who are English teachers in Shanghai right now, and they say that they're just they're in lockdown, which was really sad for them because they just were in quarantine for a long time, and now they're going in lockdown. So it's a tough situation over there. So yeah, I mean, it all depends on like um, on like if they want to continue like the zero COVID policy and stuff like that. It's um the so I mean I don't know fully like how well the Chinese vaccine works and if they're going to have like a high death rate to with an Omicron variant or whatever, but um I guess we'll see. But I know that my friends over there are locked down. And as American living in Bali, I'd love to hear you more about your stance living an expat abroad. Bali is a funny place to live as an expat, I'll tell you that. So I make a lot of jokes about Bali because it's so Bali is this very very interesting island in Indonesia, and it's interesting because it's got a lot of people that are Hindu, rather than most of um, Indonesia is Muslim, and if they're not Muslim, they're Christian, and if they're not Christian, they're they're Buddhist. And this one island, I don't want to be confusing it to say they're Hindu, right? Um, yeah, they're Hindu. So it's unusual to have this like outside of India Hindu place. And then Bali on top of it uh, became at least the capital mostly. Kuta has become like this getaway place, kind of the Cancun of for Australians. And so you like get these people that really want to party who go to Bali for the weekend or a week or whatever to go. Bali has some really good surfing too, so it attracts a lot of party people, a lot of surfers to this. to this one city. And it's just it's also, there's this other thing on top of it where I joke about there's a term in Australia called the bogan, which is essentially the American version of white trash, is what we would use in America for but it's a little different in that in Australia there's all these jobs in the mining sector where people with no college education will go into the mining sector and earn a whole bunch of money, like a lot of good money, like the equivalent of $100,000 a year. And they'll be like 19 years old. So you throw all these like kind of interesting things like together. Like you've got this 19-year-old bogan who wants to have a good time, and he'll go to Bali for some partying, and it's in many ways like Kuta is just a shit show. It's a hilarious shit show. Of just you wake up in the morning at like 9 a.m. and you leave your hotel, and like there's just drunk Aussies like going down the street. Now I don't want to say that, like I don't want to portray Australia at all being homogenous at all or anything like that. I mean, but I think Bali is quite an interesting place. It's like saying, like, I mean, if you were an American living in Cancun, I'd be like, oh God, like the first reaction would be like, oh God, you're in Cancun. Like, and so an American living in Bali, yeah, that's interesting. That's, but, being an expat abroad, it all depends on where you are. I think the cool thing about it is you meet other very interesting expats who are like adventurous, and that's one of the best things about the experience. A lot of times you end up becoming friends with people you never would because you're all the outsider. Like, so when I lived in Spain, I wasn't friends with any Spanish people, but when I lived in Jordan and Egypt, I was friends with a lot of Spanish people because we're all outsiders and you have something in common. So in many ways, you become friends with people from other countries that you'd never become friends with because you're all in the same location, which is, and outsiders, which is kind of fun. But, and your experience as an expat, like, depends on the country, like whether they hate you, whether they think you're exotic, whether they just don't give a shit about you at all. There's a lot of places where most people just don't give a shit. Like most people are very focused on their own lives and their own country, and so they don't even care. But Bali though, it's a beautiful place to be. How do you think George R. R. Martin has changed the genre of fantasy and sci-fi? I think weirdly, even though he's a sci-fi guy, it's strange that his influence, and he won all of his awards in sci-fi. Weirdly, I don't necessarily think he had that much of an impact on sci-fi. Um, his big things were talking about, like his big contributions to the sci-fi world um, were hive minds and like collective consciousness and things like that, and and how to separate like the self from your memories and your and things like this. And I don't know, even though I think there was plenty of hive mind kind of stuff before and plenty of hive mind stuff after, and like his examination of that kind of stuff um hasn't really been dealt with very much since. um like if I think about like one of his best stories, The Glass Flower, and that kind of examination of hive mindedness, like taking a drop of water and putting it into an ocean, and then taking that drop of water out of the ocean and trying to decide like what that drop of water is and how it relates to the original drop of water, like that kind of stuff with human consciousness. Like no one else is, not many people really looked at that, and not many people have looked at it since. So strangely, he didn't really change the world of sci-fi that much. And the stuff that he dealt with, like his other big thing was like genetics, and people were doing that before. That was all Frank Herbert did a lot more on that before George. And so um, uh, and so I can't really attribute anything to that. So weirdly, he didn't, even though that was his thing, he didn't really affect sci-fi that much. But then with fantasy, yeah, he was definitely part of the huge tipping point of making fantasy dark. But at the same time, this was a general movement in nerd culture to make everything dark. So, I mean, I think he was a big part of it because A Song of Ice and Fire was so big and everything. I don't think we're ever gonna see kind of classic fantasy ever again. If we do go back to it, it's going to be in a sort of ironic, Marvel jokey way. Like that's what I would see like the future of fantasy to being, is just something where people are kind of making it more fun again. Like how Marvel came in and made superheroes fun again because superheroes got too dark. Like fantasy kind of needs that. It needs something to be fun again. But even when you do that, you're still not going back to the classic sense. But yeah, Indonesia has more Hindus than Buddhists. Yeah, I have to look at the numbers, but obviously they have many more Muslims and Christians than both. I mean, that's the big ones. But I mean, it's just the function of who traded with them and who colonized them and stuff. The Chinese Communist Party is pure evil. I mean, I'm no fan of the Chinese Communist Party, but I would never say pure evil. They're bad, but there's worse embodiments out there than them. um, who is the George R. R. Martin of sci-fi? Yeah, we definitely need a new person to come back sci-fi in that world, to really bring people back to it. Even Frank Herbert has so many fantasy elements to sci-fi, but things like The Expanse were very big. When people start talking to me about like revolutionary sci-fi, some people really like the three body problem and stuff like that. So I don't know. I mean, we haven't really had a good, like, huge revolutionary sci-fi story in a long time, and I think I think I think we're due. I think we're due for something big. Um, George R. R. Martin is the George R. R. Martin of sci-fi. It's true that like Ice and Fire is more sci-fi than people realize, but it's definitely all in there. But George R. R. Martin kind of doesn't believe there's a difference between sci-fi and fantasy, which I disagree with. But yeah, fantasy was vanilla, then got dark, then we get parodies. Um, have I gone into the rainforests of Taiwan yet? Um, I don't know if they technically classify as rainforests. They might classify as cloud forests. But Taiwan is subtropical and not tropical, and I think rainforests are only in tropical areas. But yeah, I've been into the Taroko Gorge area, and I've been down to like where they have some coffee um, plantations and stuff like that. I've been down that like on the East Coast side. Um, but I haven't been too much into the nature yet. It's really tough when you got a little toddler, because it's not like hiking. You can't hike very far with a toddler. Like, you kind of go, okay, well, he can go, a kilometer. Um, but that's about it. um, this is interesting. Bali is definitely a party destination, but also become a thriving expat digital nomad hotspot. Totally agree on your points on expats, friends, and the locals are super awesome. Yeah, the Bali locals are really really interesting and really really friendly. Um, but That's interesting. The digital nomad. Yeah, I suppose if somebody was just looking for a place to, because now the world is so interconnected, and you can do your job from anywhere. Like, why wouldn't you do it from a place that's beautiful and has good internet? Um, there will be an avalanche. The Winged Knight's tourney, killing Harry's just like Sir Hugh with a giant lance and allowing Shadrick to take Sansa. Cheers. Well, that's funny. That's interesting. Um, though I think I think there's far too many um, there's far too many hints and seeds that George R. R. Martin placed in the Vale with relation to the Riverlands for everybody to just be killed off all at once. So I mean, an avalanche that only kills Sir Harry, I don't know, but the like for instance, Sandor Frey, for example, is this character that, like, why would you put this Frey in the middle of, and it's not just him. I think he has a sister too. Like, why are we putting these Freys in the middle of why did you bother in the appendix to put them as somebody's squire? Like, something has to go back to them. Like, why are the Freys married to all of these Vale households, but not so many people from everywhere else? I mean, there's a few here and there, but there's just so many more marriages to the Vale and so stuff like that. So even though this would be funny, be a funny pun that, like, a mountain's lance, um, kills people off. That that's clever, but I don't know if I see it happening, though. It's fun. It's fun to think about. Um, rapid development of technology is making it hard to write sci-fi. That's a good point. That's a good point. Um, one thing. So one thing that I also think is a barrier to most sci-fi is that so much of TV sci-fi is like Dark Mirror, Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, where it's all like, oh, the future is, you better not use your phone too much, or else your consciousness is going to be trapped in an eternal hell. It This kind of idea of fantasy, of sci-fi as warning about technology. I think people don't want to hear it anymore. Like, I think everybody is like, I think society is full on board with technology, technology, technology. It's a great thing. Which is why Star Trek did so well, is people were like, oh, wow, the future is going to be great because of technology. Um, and so I'd like to see more sci-fi that's oriented on, what can technology do for us to create an interesting, great future. But it is true that there's so much that technology, goes so fast. Now I think a lot of sci-fi is about nanobots this, nanobots that. And it's like, how far can you really go with nanobots? Nanobots all of a sudden become this this wish making thing that can do anything. Oh, you want your body repaired? Nanobot. Like, it's true, nanobots are interesting, but and that's maybe the future of things, but it gets to the point where, nanobots can do everything. You're just like, well, what are we exploring here? I think it's why The Expanse did so well. Is technology is not seen as bad nor good in The Expanse. It's just something that's there. Um, there's so many limitations to technology in The Expanse, which I think is really important. But I'd like to see more sci-fi like The Expanse in the future. Honestly, I think that they the two of them did a really great job. Um, um, Sent a dumb email about Lyanna being established as the Knight of the Laughing Tree in order to set a precedent for my tinfoil that she was able to wear Rhaegar's army of the Trident. Thoughts? Huh. Um, well, that's a an interesting one. I mean, Ned does remember her being at the Tower of Joy, screaming out a window. I mean, it could be anybody, but dreams are weird. Um, her wearing the armor at the Tower of Joy, and that Robert killed Lyanna instead, oof, that would be pretty hard. That'd be pretty harsh. I mean, I admit there's a little bit of George R. R. Martin in that. Um, so Night of the Laughing Tree is a funny little theory because on the one hand, I'm not saying that there's not any evidence of it in the text. Like obviously, like Elia Sand being a jouster is clearly a reference to the possibility of Lyanna being a jouster. Now, at the same time, I would never say that Elia Sand would win a tournament or even defeat like anybody at a tournament. And so when we think about, I mean, the Knight of the Laughing Tree didn't win the tournament, but he defeated three people. So we think about like a 15-year-old girl being able to, who's not from a jousting culture, to be able to win against three people because she's really good at riding horses. It's a bit much. Like the logical explanation is that the Knight of the Laughing Tree is Ned. Like that's it. Like that just makes the most sense. And George does write how making, in a way that what makes the most sense is there. Had he established in the text that like Lyanna was practicing jousting all over the place, or that jousting is really popular at Winterfell, that'd be one thing. But we don't really have that yet. So I've never been one to really buy into, uh, Lyanna being the Nut of the Laughing Tree. Even though this is like headcanon for most of the community that, oh yes, Lyanna was Knight of the Laughing Tree, and then Rhaegar went off to find her, to find the knight, and then they talked and they fell in love, and that's how the whole thing started. And oh gosh, oh gosh. Let's see here. Few things to talk about here. First off, like, no, like, so let's talk about the Chinese Communist Party. Lasted 10 years max. Chinese Communist Party is still going strong. Mao killed at least 50 million people just to get into power, not to mention the infanticide of young girls, etc. Nah, this is a bit off. And so, look, Mao's a horrible guy. Okay, don't get me wrong. Marl's like this. This is what's weird about things. Like when people need to exaggerate on something that's like already bad. Like Mao was already a bad guy. You don't need to like make things even worse for him. Okay, like he wasn't like Mao wasn't responsible for the infanticide of young girls. They were killing young girls before Mao. They're killing young girls after Mao. They were, that kind of stuff just happened all over the place. Did Mao cause that? No. Now, did Mao specifically kill 50 million people in the Chinese Civil War? How many people died in the Chinese? First of all, to blame it all on Mao is ridiculous because, they were fighting before Mao was even doing stuff, and they would have been fighting with or without Mao. So, to blame everything on Mao is really tough because there'd be another person. Like this was a big problem. Like China had a situation where you had these warlords who had, a slavery like situation, and there was probably going to be a rebellion, a movement to overthrow these warlords no matter what, and it was going to be bloody no matter what. Do I want to blame it all on Mao? Like, look, Mao's horrible. Like Mao's dreadful. Okay, the anti-rightist campaign was really sinister. The Great Leap Forward was phenomenally dumb, and the Cultural Revolution was just monstrous. Okay, but if you're like trying to add up bodies and like pin stuff on Mao that way, you're just going about it wrong. Like that's just not how things go. Like you just go, well, Mao was the most evil because he personally killed all of these people. No, that's just not what happened. Like he's a monstrous guy, but he's also a monstrous guy because he was so incompetent on things, and there was a lot of people around him doing horrible stuff. Like he was one cog in a huge movement. You just I like, even when people like put like everything on Hitler for World War II, like I can't even blame everything on Hitler. He was still part of a Nazi movement. And that if Hitler wasn't around, would the Nazi movement probably still been around? Probably. It just would have been a different guy, So I don't know. I don't know why people like feel the need to exaggerate the monstrousness of monsters. Like they're already. It's like cheetahs. They can run really fast. They can run like 2,000 miles an hour. No, like you don't need to do that. Like cheetah's already the fastest animal on earth. Like, it runs 75 miles an hour. Like we're in it. We're in it. Like we don't need to start claiming that it runs 1,000 miles an hour. Like Jesus, like you lose your own legitimacy when you just lie and like start saying things that aren't true. Like, I don't know why these things. Thank you, Forrest. Oh, calm down now. Yeah, I know. I need to calm. Everybody needs to calm. Um. Uh. Why does Tyrion say that young Griff took the bait to go west? This is real quick. Young Griff. Tyrion like brings up that like to young Griff that if he were young Griff, he would go west and establish himself and have Daenerys come to him once he's already established in Westeros. And that's what later young Griff like recommends. And so they do it, and they all do it in Volantis. So he took the bait, and that he did exactly what Tyrion recommended. And is Tyrion really against young Griff? I don't think he's necessarily against young Griff, but I think had young Griff gone east to Daenerys, who like what the hell is like what's Tyrion's function? Like what's Tyrion's role? He's nobody. He's just a dude. Like at that point, Daenerys has such an overwhelming force that she doesn't need Tyrion or any like his know-how or Casterly Rock or anything like that. I think that's the kind of situation. Ned reminded Robert about the trident. Did Robert even fight there? Did Ned wear Robert's armor? Did he kill Lyanna in Rhaegar's armor? I mean, oh, I don't know. I think that's a little much to say all of this, but let's do a little bit of spicy politics and then for a little bit and then go on here. Real quick, is R plus L still gonna be canon in your Winds of Winter? I don't know. I mean, we'll see. It's gonna be revealed later down the road, but we'll see. Yes. The yeah, this is what I see what Corey is saying is accurate here. Like saying something that's accurate is not being an apologist, okay? But also like now focusing on certain things too much and then like all the time. You can, even if you speak truth, you can imply something that's not there. Like if I went on this stream every week and I started talking about how, in America, black people commit more crime than white people do proportionally. This is a fact that's true. But if I just kept talking about that over and over and over and over and over every week, like I would be a racist, because the thing I'm implying with it every week is what I'm trying to get people to extrapolate from it is not necessarily like a great thing. This is why like all of these channels that focus on like woke Disney and stuff like that. It's not that like I don't think that like there's the people are trying to appeal economically to some sort of like woke mentality doesn't exist. But if I focused on that over and over and over and over and over again, like I'd be giving the implication of something that's just not true. So that's the thing is that one can be dishonest in content, and then one can be dishonest in focus, you know? And so but I agree what you're saying here, Corey, and that you're ironically saying that like what Carl was doing was just not logically sound. Like he was exaggerating something bad that happened, and then claiming that like anybody that says anything the opposite is somehow an apologist, which is straw manning and all sorts of things. Like there's some weird things. Like if you want to like, God, it really gets into some weird stuff. Like if I want to go super spicy, let's go into like Holocaust, right? So the Holocaust, like all estimations say that somewhere between like 3.5 million and 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. Now, if you actually like talk to like scholars, like they'll be like, okay, well, 6 million is the upper limit of the estimation. So like really it's probably about like, 4 to 5 million or something. But if you went out and like focused on that like every week, oh well, the accuracy is actually in this range, you'd look like an anti-Semite. So like, and people would accuse you. You'd be like, what? You don't believe the 6 million number? You're an anti-Semite, And so there's just all this like ridiculousness about like putting out numbers, putting out exaggerations, and then baiting people another way. And so, yeah, like, baiting people into saying like, oh, Mao killed 50 million people. No, he didn't. But like, he was a horrible guy. But if I deny the fact that like Mao killed 50 million people, like I'm sort of an apologist. Like, this gets into the complexities of like truth, like, and what you're going to do. It's ridiculous. What do you think woke Disney is about? That woke Disney is about money. Everything is about money. When we talk about a firm putting out products, it's about money, like what they think they can like make money off of. That's it. Like that's it. Like either somebody on the board is saying like, oh, this is a hip idea. People will watch this because I think there's a lot of people interested in this, or they think, oh, demographically, this will bring in viewers because this is a large demographic of people in America. So we want to put that out there. Like, if you think like there's any moral aspect to what Disney is doing in any respect, you're off. Like it is, Disney puts out conservative content when it wants money. It puts out liberal content when it wants money. And there is a lot of conservative content out there. There's much more conservative content on TV than liberal content. Even though your YouTube channels will claim, oh, woke this and woke that, there is so much more conservative content on TV than liberal content. That's just the fact of life. Like the fact, and nobody sits there and is railing about conservative content. Nobody does videos on that. Like, but it's just like, there's so much, but so, I agree. Dolly Parton is definitely more woke than Disney because Dolly Parton does things against her financial interest. And Disney does not, but Dolly Parton is a single human being. Dolly Parton is like, by all accounts, Dolly Parton's a wonderful woman. No one can deny that. But like, do you think that like Dolly Parton, like doing an album with Yusuf Islam, like plays to her audience? Like, no, like she just did it because she did it and it was the right thing to do. Like her audience is super conservative and she comes out and does liberal things so much because it's just, she believes it's the right thing to do. Because she's one person. Yeah. So like Dolly Parton is way, way, way more woke than Disney. Yeah. Some lefties do rail against conservatives, but when we look at like conservative aspects of media, I don't see people criticizing conservative Hollywood like that much. Like the fact that like the good guy with the gun is the plot of so many stories in Hollywood, or the lionized police officer is so many stories in Hollywood, and like what that does, and how the drug dealer and the drug user are so evil in Hollywood. That just when you want a stock bad guy that is worthless, that should just be killed, you can just you can put out either a drug dealer or a junkie or any of these people. Um, yeah, I suppose Big Joel does focus a lot on that. He goes way for the obvious ones. Like he does a lot of Christian movies and Dr. Phil and stuff that's pretty low hanging fruit. But I think like the it's like the subtle stuff that we don't even think about. Like I think like the movie Bad Boys. Like no one would think, oh, the movie Bad Boys is conservative. It's super conservative, to put out that movie. But cops are nothing but hardworking regular men trying to do what's right, and all these drug dealers, they're worthless. They're scum. Like all these drug users, junkies are worthless. Regarding Disney Star Wars prequels or sequels, I mean they're both pretty bad. I'm trying to think like. I mean, I'll grant that the prequels have more interesting world building, but I think Last Jedi is a more ambitious piece of art than and than any of the others. But so I don't know. It's tough. Last Jedi. I know I say tough a lot, and everybody drinks, but the but it's I mean, I would say that Last Jedi, just because Last Jedi is so risky. I don't even know if it works, but because Last Jedi like is risky, I would say that the sequels are slightly better than the prequels, just in the sense that The Last Jedi by itself is a risky movie. I respect it as a movie more than any of the prequels. um, let's see here. Yeah, the SJW types, in my experience, more intellectually absorbed, focused their criticisms on big institutions like banks, corps, politicians, etc. Yeah, so I think this is a big thing about politics right now, um, is that the Republicans don't really have any policies that they can focus um, on their own, and so what you'll see is um, them kind of do a bait and switch, and they'll pull some sort of non-government related social movement and then claim that they're going to have the opposite like position to try to rope people in. So like take wokeness itself. Like wokeness has nothing to do with the government. It has nothing to do with politicians. But then you can have a bunch of Republicans being like, we're anti-woke, vote for me. Well, there's nothing. The Democrats don't yet do that. They don't take some sort of like rigid social conservative idea and then try to take the opposite position. It's only the Republicans so far that are just like they don't have any policy ideas, and so they kind of just pick a irrelevant social movement. Um, let's see here. Can you explain to me when you said that we don't know how jobs are created or whatever? It was you said that to what effect? I heard you say this, but I didn't understand it totally. Okay, so I'm gonna get back to economics. So in economics, there's a basic principle of supply and demand, and the long version of this, when you hear everybody talks about supply and demand, but what one really is talking about is that prices shift until supply equals demand and markets clear. Okay, so that's the full extent of this belief, and in principle, this is like if we want to talk about this on the how you'll see it in the store. So say you go to the store and you want the there's Cheerios on the shelf, and he's got 100 boxes of Cheerios, and he's selling them for $5 a pop. All right, well, that's a little expensive. So if you sold Cheerios for $5 a pop, maybe 20 of those boxes are going to go. And now he's stuck with 80 boxes of Cheerios. And so what he'll do is he'll lower the price to $4. And that has a few more boxes start going. And so then he'll start selling them a little more. And then at the end, like he'll eventually find the price in which all Cheerio boxes are gone. Probably something around $2.80, and that's what we talk about. Prices shifting until supply meets demand. There is a certain demand for Cheerios in the market, certain supply of Cheerios in the market, and there's an equilibrium price that things shift down to get to that point. And so that is the sale. The sale is when, everything happens and markets are cleared. So now when we're talking about employment and jobs, so employment is labor. Labor is sold on the market much in the same way Cheerios are. And firms buy labor in the same way that a human being goes in and buys Cheerios. So you have workers on the market, and they kind of say, okay, well, I'm willing to work for this and this price, this and this salary. I'm willing to work for this and this price. And so theoretically, all of the workers willing to work for this and this price get scooped up. And then the wage rate should lower, prices should shift. People should be willing to take fewer salaries until, an employer buys up all of the workers and we have no workers left. Okay. And so when I say that we don't know, so there should theoretically, according to economic theory, be no unemployment ever. But that's not what happens. Like prices don't shift. And so we call that those sticky prices. And so what the kind of holy grail of economics is why unemployment happens, why there are sticky prices when it comes to the price of labor, and why markets don't clear. And so that's what we kind of don't fully understand. Now, like when jobs are created, so when we talk about like how many jobs are out there, how many jobs are being created, we don't know. Like you can start a factory and you can employ 100 people, but those 100 people probably had other jobs before. So they're getting pulled from those other jobs. So you're not really creating new jobs. You're just transitioning people. You're becoming a competitor for labor in that market. So we don't know how many jobs are actually being created or destroyed when you enter the market with a firm. So this is the big thing. So we don't know why markets don't clear with labor. We don't know why unemployment happens. We don't really know how jobs are created. So when a politician says I'm going to create jobs, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's making that up because it's like saying I would like anybody that discovered this, like why unemployment happens, like wins the Nobel Prize. People with ideas on this have won the Nobel Prize, and it's not even a full answer. So for a politician to say I'm going to create jobs, it's ridiculous. It's the most ridiculous thing. It's like a politician being like, you know what? I've solved how relativity and my mind's totally blanking on the other branch of physics. Relate. The Schrodinger's cat, uncertainty, and all of that. Quantum entanglement and things like this. Anyway, let's see here. Do you know Renegade Cut? He's further left than you. He does great videos on politics through the lens of film. He's a great vid on the evil of Danny. I have not seen his stuff. No, I can check it out though. But the I'm like a Cheerio. Yes. Spicy economics. Renegade Cut. I'm going to look him up right now, actually, see how he's doing. When I hear Renegade Cut, I think of like the Highlander 2 Renegade Cut. Oh, I see. Oh, he's an anarchist. Um, yeah, yeah. The most of the left people and most of the left people I see online are quantum physics is what I was thinking. But the most of the people I see online that are left are yeah, they're full socialists or full anarchists, which I'm not. I mean, I suppose like Destiny is a left wing kind of mixed economy kind of person, and you know he's obviously very big, but there's not too many. There's not too many. The problem is there's not too many people that have kind of um, uh, I suppose mixed economy beliefs um, on who are coming out with political content. You know, um, let's see here. Unemployment is caused by disrupted intrinsic motivation and damaged humans. Prize me, bro. Um, there are some people. So there's a guy who wrote, who won the Nobel Prize a few years ago, named Alvin Roth, who focused on um, unemployment and why it happens and improving things. And he looked at uh, med students out of medical school and how they found hospitals to work at, and how there was a kind of matchmaking computer program that could help better like bring doctors to hospitals. He also studied processes on bringing kidneys and kidney donors to kidney recipients. And so this two work, the work that he did on both of these, won a Nobel Prize. But he kind of interestingly compared unemployment to dating. And there is actually a big difference. Before somebody said, "Oh, I'm like a Cheerios box." You're not quite like a Cheerios box, because there is a big difference between Cheerios and labor, and that is Cheerios don't also have a choice. When it comes to labor, and when it comes to dating, or when it comes to kidneys, you've got two rational actors making decisions, and that makes things harder, right? Like theoretically, everybody should like no one should be single, because everybody should just like go down the list, like keep trying. Well, that person's too hot for me. That person's too good for me, and eventually find like their mate. But that doesn't happen because we've got two rational actors like trying to do choices simultaneously. A firm might make an offer, and then a person rejects that offer. A person might want to get a job, and the firm doesn't want to pick them up. So a lot of weird stuff like that. Destiny is left wing on most things. In fact, Destiny very famously spent like over $100,000 of his own money to go and campaign for the two Georgia Senate candidates, and went down there and organized a whole bunch of stuff. So on that, I mean, you can find a specific issue where he seems a little right wing, but just on that fact that he did so much to get Democrats elected in Georgia, I would say that I would count him as a left wing person. There's a lot I'm going to forgive. Because people can say something and spew something, and then what's your actual actions? What's your actual action in affecting the world? And so, Destiny can be a big debater, but the fact that he put his money where his mouth was and put in all of this time and energy to help Democrats in Georgia, that goes a long way in my mind. It goes a long way in my mind. You can show me 1,000 bad tweets or 1,000 bad takes on like fringe issues, and I'm gonna probably forgive it because he did what mattered, which was go out and actually campaign. In Preston's world economy, which industries would be government run and which would be privately run? Well, you you do a test. You say, okay, well, is there, you start out with a free market and you see like how it goes. And then if the free market isn't working, then you discuss whether or not um, you know there needs to be government intervention. So I mean, I think the big example in America is that the healthcare industry has proven that um, has proven to be kind of dysfunctional, and at that point you have like intervention. And so that's the big thing. For other issues, you have to discuss, how much government intervention would be there. Like when we start talking about like the education market, you know, how much intervention should be there. But it's case by case. You have experts in each of these fields that determine um, which ones are going to be have government intervention. And for the most part, this is how our system works. I don't think our system is necessarily bad in this respect. It works in the sense that the government interferes like and enters when a field has proven itself to be broken, like, unless lobbyists come in and stop it. So yeah. So that's how I do it. It's not like I'm just going to sit there and be like, well, this industry. Well, I'm not the expert in everything. I think certain things, like I know enough about healthcare um, to know that it's pretty freaking broken. But the I don't know enough about the education sector, for instance. I would leave that up to experts. Um, Leftist infighting and purity testing is killing any progressive movements in the U.S. Yes, I agree with you. I agree. I think the big thing is that no candidate is good enough for a Democrat and no candidate is bad enough for a Republican. I think that woke scolds are horrible, horrible people who are short-sighted and self-interested. They're more interested in making themselves look like they are pure and great than to actually making a difference. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, Destiny is still a tool. You can be a tool and still be doing good things. Lots of people are tools. Lots of people are assholes and do great things. You know, like those aren't mutually exclusive. Like being a nice person. Like I've met some wonderful people, wonderful, wonderful, nice human beings. So sweet, who are right wingers, and they don't know it, but they're making the world a worse place. I've met a lot of horrible, dreadful people that are left wingers. Um, like no side has a monopoly on assholes or nice people. It's irrelevant stuff. We're talking about like what makes society better, like run better. And you know, like I think Bill Clinton was a great president. Do I think he's a good person? No, but I think he's a great president. You know, Democratic Party is a lot left wing. I mean, this is all like, you know, depending on which issue and on a global scale and how you define things. Like, um, you know, it's left wing for America, so it's just. I mean, everything's relative. Um, Destiny is a neoliberal centrist. Uh, See, I just like neoliberal is this meaningless term now that online leftists use as an insult to people. Like it doesn't mean anything. Like neoliberal, like and centrist doesn't mean anything either. Like he's definitely not a centrist as he did a bunch for the Democratic Party. Like and so in America there are no centrists in America. What issue can you be a centrist in America on anymore? Like there's nothing left. Like there's the destruction and doom of the Republican Party, and then there's stopping that. Like how can you be like what can you be like somewhat for sliding into doom, somewhat sliding into there's no centrism in America. So you're either for making the world better and trying to make the world better through government programs, or you're for destruction. Like that's it. Um, Anarchy, libertarian, something. I don't know. It's just um Destiny says the N word. Yeah, don't care. Don't care. That's not gonna, like I say, like, don't care. Like, what people say is very different from what people do. And he's a person who's done something, like, very good. And I can't, he also, like, all of the liberal Twitch streamers out there who I also think are doing net good for the world. Like, I think that Hassan and Vosh are doing net good for the world. And they wouldn't have a platform had Destiny not established, like, politics Twitch streaming in the first place. So I don't know. Um, hey Preston, situation. Explain the situation in Kashmir. Oh Jesus. Um, so when India got independence from the UK, it 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 kind of established itself. There was no concept of being Indian. South Asians didn't have a kind of unity as an identity to them, and so this is a tough situation because you're forming a nation state, and you're kind of say, well, what brings us together? Well, before, what brought us together was being anti-British, but now what makes an Indian who they are? They share nothing. An individual Indian shares nothing with each other. Their languages are all over the map. Their religions are all over the map. Um, what is the unifying thing that makes India what it is? And so there's this process of like creating Indianness as a social movement. And we see this in many different places. Like, what does it mean to be Chinese? What does it mean to be Arab? Um, there aren't good answers. There are no answers because these are imagined concepts. And so when Pakistan broke off, um, both East and West. So India was unified and Pakistan broke off, and then Bangladesh broke away from Pakistan. There was East Pakistan and West Pakistan for a while. Pakistan broke off, but it kind of had a central identity to itself as being Muslim. So this put India in a tough situation, because if you sort of said, like, well, wait a minute, if you're defining yourself as Muslim, India now has to define itself as something opposite of that, either not Muslim or Hindu, which would also piss off the Sikhs and the Jains and things like this, and the Christians who have sizable populations in India. So India was in a situation where we're like, well, no, like, you're defining yourself as a Muslim state, but, like, we can't do that, or else India would break into many small states. So for their own survival, India kind of says, well, no, we're multicultural, and we're not going to give up any more territory. Like, we don't care if there's Muslims living there. We don't care. In fact, I think India boasts having more Muslims than Pakistan, which is a so they'll say, oh, well, India has more Muslim than we have more Muslims than Pakistan. So, but this still creates a situation. Kashmir is just one. It's just a situation where you've got all these tiny little villages of different people with different ethnic backgrounds that identify with a certain state, and then the states claim certain areas, and neither side wants to cede, because if Pakistan cedes territory, they look weak, and then if India cedes territory, they're defining themselves as not a Muslim state, which would cause all other Muslim areas to want more. So that's, for the most part, the broad sense of it. But it's, when you actually look at the border of Kashmir, it's insane. It's insane. There are pieces of Pakistan inside pieces of India, inside pieces of Pakistan. Like, it's crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. He's been sicking his followers on trans streamers. Yeah, I get it. You know, it's I don't know, the sicking thing, I don't know if he's been really doing that. I mean, you can blame a lot on everybody says like, oh, if a Destiny fan does something. Like the thing is, I've had people in my history like claiming, oh, this Preston Jacobs fan did something and try to blame me for it. I'm like, I didn't freaking do anything. Like, whatever. Like, just because one person that like watched my stuff like did something, I'm responsible for all of that. So no, I'm not gonna to blame, that kind of stuff. So even if you come up with like he shills NFTs, which is dumb, still, sorry. I mean, he did a lot of good. You could get like, um. So let's see. For all the evolution of language, I'll accept whatever pronouns you want, but woke scold has to be objectively the worst word ever created. Um, yeah, but it's so fitting though, right? Like there's so many people that like scold you for not being perfect, out there. And it's just like, I'm not gonna, it's just, and why do they do it? Why do they waste all this time like trying to trying to uh um they waste all of this time on trying to prove themselves pure and try to bring down other people on Twitter. I don't know. Um, you can be centrist in gun control. Yeah, I mean, I suppose you can say I'm against um I don't, in fact, I would say on guns is an issue where you have very few people uh that are in the ban it all camp. Very few. Because, well, no politicians. We have no politicians in the ban it all camp. Um, and so most people are kind of in this situation of like, well, we're going to try to get these big machine guns, off the streets or something, because it's just like, well, what can we do? I mean, you know, I personally would like them all banned, but there's very few of me out there that are willing to say that. Like, but if somebody said to me, no, let's just start with like, heavy registration and stuff like this, and getting machine guns off the street, and having smart chips and um, things like that. Um, but yeah, but I have a you know there's certain issues where I'm just in a certain camp. I'm just like, no, man, like, let's just, I would settle for all of those things. Like if you could just, like, it's so easy, like, just put a little chip in guns like the same way we put them in phones. We can GPS know where they all are. Like when you lose your phone, like, with instantly you can have it canceled. And we could easily do that for guns. Easily. But yeah, will anyone let us do that in America? No. No. Um, will John versus Mance be Wildling King? I think the original plan was for John to be Wildling King, but I don't know if it's it's interesting that Mance is still alive, and we'll see how it does. But um, uh, just comes down to a certain mass of his followers doing harassment. It sucks. Well, I mean, like I say, like there's so many when people have millions of followers out there, it's just it's tough to keep them all in line. Um, do you think another Trump-like presidency could send the U.S. into fascism? I get nervous as a young person. Yeah, no, I do. It's definitely a huge fear of mine. It's a huge fear that the next person, who's slightly like, the saving grace of Trump was that he was so incompetent and he was such a buffoon. Somebody that's slightly smarter, um, yeah, absolutely. It's a huge worry for me. It's a huge worry that, like, you see right wing media and right wing content praising practically fascist states like Hungary and stuff like that. It's it's certainly scary. Yeah. Um, so, did you ever consider going to law school? No, because even though I think law school would be really, really fun, like breaking apart these law cases and everything, and I think being a lawyer would just be boring as fuck. So I never considered law school. Even though, I mean, some people do go to law school and then do other things after, which maybe, but I think I was well past, I think I was already in grad school when I decided that law school might be fun, but at that point, Preston wants to cancel guns. I mean, it's weird how we use these words "cancel" for everything, but no. I mean, I wish guns were much more regulated, if not completely banned in America, because they fucking kill people, and we can't go anywhere without being fucking scared at night. And um, yeah, I mean, like I say, I've had a pistol pointed at my face a couple times in my life. It's not a great feeling. It's I've been attempted mugged 5 times in my life. It really ruins America. And the for the most part, like if it were just like hunters who wanted to go hunting with a rifle, fine, we can leave those people. But like these gun worshippers who are who collect guns because they think they're cool and then try to affect law, like any regulation at all, um is just damaging and killing people. It's just killing people. um yeah, I mean, yeah, it's same in London, but for knives. But obviously the big difference between a knife and a gun is that a gun is going to kill you more easily. So um, there's an argument that guns should even be regulated because they're too easy of a suicide method. Like so many people use it for a suicide method in America that it kills people in that respect. Well, if people went back to taking pills, there would be more survival from suicide. And that instead the gun just like boom, there's no second chance with that. So it's tough. Um, I'm writing the Davos sample chapter, looking for some criticism. Do you have a place for discussing ideas and review chapters? I think there's a Discord and a Reddit, um, that you can search for. But has Preston ever been arrested? No, I've never been arrested. It's a bad thing for government employment if you've ever been arrested. That's a tough one. Uh, but no, I've never been arrested. I've been harassed by the cops plenty of times, but um, the yeah, it really hurts. It really hurts your career in America if you've been arrested. Um, yeah, this is definitely what I. The thing is, when you see that gun, you think death, and you think like that's the answer. I had a friend in high school who killed himself with a gun. It's it's not a, it's yeah, it's not great. There's just no reason. There's no reason that we can't have a world where guns are tracked like the same way that phones are. And that like last week when guns came up, somebody, so one of these guns people that like they always have the same fucking arguments. First of all, guns people are hilarious because they're exactly like snake oil salesmen. Snake oil is always the cure all to everything, right? Like, oh, really? You have a bad back? Yeah, just rub the snake oil on your back. Oh, really? You've got indigestion problems? Yeah, drink the snake oil. So like guns are always like, oh, really? There's too much crime in America? More guns. Oh, really? There's killings in schools? More guns. Oh, there's terrorists on airplanes? More guns. Like it's always the answer is always fucking more guns, and it's just like, oh god, like, oh. Like they're so disingenuous. Like they're the biggest snake oil salesmen. Um, but yeah, with guns, like you could so easily just like So somebody thinking they're smart saying, "Oh, I bet that gun that was pointed at your face was registered." No, but had it been in a system where a stolen gun is immediately identified according to a database and can be located GPS wise, like, like not that big of a deal. Pro surveillance precedent. I mean, we already have this with phones and cars. Like, cars all have like VPNs and LoJacks and shit. Phones have all this. Like, what is this pro surveillance? Like, that we already have this. This is already there. Like, come on. you know, it's not that tough. Plus, like, I mean, look, like, I'm wary of the surveillance state as much as anybody, but like, privacy's dead. Privacy is dead. Like, you're done. Like, there's everywhere you walk, there's cameras that see you. Everywhere you go, there's phones that see you. Every time you take a picture, by the way, there's a little code in your phone in that picture that gives the time and the location of that picture. So you send a picture of like everyone can find, like, with enough effort, everything can be found. Your location can be found. So the fact that, like, you want it for a gun, like, geez, government needs a warrant to view GPS info from other devices. I'm just talking about canceling the gun. Like, your gun gets stolen, and then, just like your phone, and then you call up the company, and you're like, oh, my gun's been stolen. Okay, we'll shut it off. Same thing you can do with a phone. Like, it's not that hard. Like, are we just so lost in society? Like, no, we can't figure it out. We can't figure it out. Like, come on. It's just, oh, I don't want surveillance. I don't want me knowing when people are shooting each other. When are you doing when are we doing the prequel chapter? I mean, you mean like the prologue? Yeah, the prologue will probably be soon. I think within the first 5 chapters. I think but yeah, but this can be done easily. I mean, phones weren't digital originally. Like, all this stuff can be done. Like, there are smart yoga pants out there, by the way. Like, I don't think you understand. Do you guys know about the Internet of Things? Like, the Internet of Things is not like a new concept. Like, the Internet of Things is this idea that almost everything that we have is being connected to the internet, whether it be your refrigerator. So you can know, like your refrigerator can, like, these new smart fridges are going to, like, track, like, what products are in it, and, like, the temperature levels, and you can change, like, different parts of the fridge based on, like, what products are in it. And there are smart yoga pants that track, like, how much, like, exercise you're doing, and then you can, like, track the like, I think Sony this year will not be having any TVs that are not connected to the internet. Like, they're all Internet of Things. Like, like, people are trying to tell me, like, oh, we can't figure out fucking guns. Like, of course you can fucking figure out guns. Like, like, of course you can. Like, yeah, well, they all melt and are horrible. They blow up on you. But you can do that if you want. But also, Internet of Things, you can find out when somebody prints that shit. But the point is, let's start small. Let's get the guns. Like, not everybody has a fucking printer. It's like, I can do that. Can everyone? Like, we've got so many guns in America that, and so much gun crime. Like, you could fucking, like, easily stop this shit. I mean, this is the funny thing, right? Like, the fact that there are fucking yoga pants. Now, first of all, have you seen these cars, the new cars that are coming out? Like, they're already on the streets in China. But you get into the car, okay, and the ignition is your face. All right, facial recognition instantly when you get in, and then it starts recognizing things, like when you start looking different directions, like it'll it'll say things like keep your eye on the road. Like a lot of times people like doze off and they're like, and then it'll be like, it'll alert you like keep your eye on the road. Like all sorts of these things like exist now with the cars. Like, you know. And this is the thing is oh, like we've got to fear the future. Like, I'm sorry, this is the world that's happening. Like, it's here. You're done. Like, have you guys ever heard of the Future Institute? The Futurist Institute. They have a um, they have an emerging trends report every year that is one of the fucking best reads you can ever have. Because they're just like, oh my gosh, like these things where people are like, oh, we've got to worry about this and this. No, it's already here, right? If you're talking about like worrying about like the if you're talking about like worrying about the police state of monitoring you, I'd be like, oh really? Are you gonna tell me about the finale of Friends now? Like what world do you exist in? Like this has been here for a long time. uh, um as soon as they take your gun, all the other rights will follow. That's why we have them. Um, does this make sense, Adam Warlock? Like, first of all, this tends to be the same group that wants to immediately take all rights away from women and make it so that they can't have abortions. So, I mean, if you're going to say like, oh, if you're going to use slippery slope argument, like, oh, if you take this one right, all other rights will follow. Like, no, that's not a good argument, like, right? So yeah, if we take abortion rights, I guess all other rights will follow. What? Like all laws that exist are a restriction of rights to some degree, right? Like we live in a society that's free, and then we realize that things get fucked up a little bit because people are doing shit, and so we regulate little things. Like that's how it works. Because some people's freedom starts infringing upon other people's freedoms. So everything's a balance of freedom. Like I can't walk around at night in parks in America because somebody else, some other jackoff feels like he wants to have the right to guns. So like everything's a balance of rights. So this immediate like jump to say like, oh, other rights will follow is not based on anything. Now, that's why we have them. It's just not true. Okay. No one is overthrowing the government with handguns and small arms. It's just not happening. Like, have you like looked at Ukraine right now? Like the issue in Ukraine is tanks. Like tanks win wars. Like and like drone strikes. And like, do you think a bunch of like jackoffs with like machine guns are gonna overthrow the government? Like, no. Like that's not gonna happen. Like that's not like no. Like that's not how war is fought. Like look at any fucking war. Like that's the average person can't have tanks. Tanks is the real thing that overthrows governments. We need to get tanks. Everybody should have a tank. According to your idea here. Oh, we need them. We need the right to have a tank. We need the right. We need that ability to overthrow the government at any time. Really? Okay. Well, let's get tanks and nukes and drone strikes because that's what it takes. The difference between it's already here and universal and mandatory. Not much. I mean, it's getting to the point where smartphones are pretty universal and mandatory, right? Like I can't pay for parking meters in Washington D.C. without a smartphone. Um, I mean, you literally can't put coins in anymore. They're all smart. They're all done through an app. I mean, there's all sorts of things that are like functioning like that. Um, I mean, Adam Smith talked about this a lot, like that there's a certain number of regular things that an average person needs to succeed in society. So like he gave the example of like a pair of shoes and pants and shirt that allow you to go get a job. But today it's like, you need internet access. You need to be able to produce like a resume and on the internet. So the internet becomes something kind of universal. So like a universal and mandatory like chip in guns, like that seems really fucking like, first of all, if you don't want it, don't get a gun. Like right there. It's like car insurance. Like, oh God, you're fucking making me get a license in car insurance. Well, you don't have to. Don't get a fucking car. Like if you don't want the fucking chip in your gun, don't get a gun. Like it's not even mandatory. There's so many other things that are mandatory. Like the fact that you can't get around without a smartphone, and smartphones all have GPS tracking, is already here. And that's something that's pretty much mandatory for an urbanite, at least. You can't get around without a smartphone anymore. While like a gun, who needs a fucking gun? Like I've lived my whole life without a gun. You can do fine without a gun. Could the red comet be a tough flyby? Maybe. Cops don't need guns. I don't think they do. I mean, in the UK they don't have guns, but you've got to get the guns off the street first before, taking them from the cops. But yeah, everyone should have a tank. U.S. is a corporation. No, that's not how. No, U.S. is not a corporation in any respect. Corporations, like, their primary motivation is profit, and that even though you could claim that, like, oh, individual representatives can be bought and sold, that's not the function. That's not the function of the government or government employees. They're not driven by these sort of things. Like, government organizations do not have profit as a mission. So there's nothing like being a federal employee and having worked in government my whole life. There's nothing profit related to what we're doing. Like, it's not a corporation. Like, I mean, you can say it's corrupt. You can say there's problems with the government, but comparing it to a corporation, I would say it's just not true. This is the spicy politics part. We're at the end. You should have been here for the first couple hours, man. First couple hours is the good old Game of Thrones talk. Tanks are last century. Switchblade drones. Fair enough. The point is this complete, like, again, it's snake oil salesman, like, mentality of, like, guns being the cure-all, is that, like, oh, you've got problems with the government and the overreach of the government, guns are the solution. Oh, you have a problem with crime, guns are the solution. You want to be a man, you want to look really manly and cool, guns are the solution. You want to pick up women, guns are the solution. Like, no, none of these things are true. None. Guns will not stop government overreach. Guns will not lower crime. Guns will not make you look cool. Guns will not get you women. Like every promise that guns makes is wrong. Like, they will not do any of these things. They will not save you from someone breaking into your house. They will not protect you from someone trying to mug you. None of these things are going to work. Like, it's rough. Do you think all magic comes from the same source? I mean, it's just all telepathy in my opinion. I don't think there's like a bucket of ether or a god giving out power. I just think that everyone has the same source, being like genetic ability to have telepathy. 90% of the population wanting the government gone would have it gone with or without guns. I mean, you can look at really crappy states and where people still have guns, and I could take Afghanistan. A lot of huge gun ownership there. People hate the state. They're dumb. They're not going to do anything. They can't do anything. I mean, there's no. I mean, 90%. Like, at 90%, like, I don't know. Like, nah, I still don't think you could do it with guns. Why do you think the Americans care about the Constitution? It was made by a bunch of dumb old blokes, and it's changed over time, and it's not even that old. they don't care about the Constitution. They care about the Constitution. The Constitution is a religion. And just like religion, there's usually a text that the followers don't understand, that they inject their own interpretation of. And so it's a way to take your personal belief and make it into a dogmatic, everyone should follow my belief. And my excuse is this dogmatic text, when it's really your interpretation of that text. So it's people love it because it's a scheme for making their personal beliefs seem like they're universal when they're not. Like, you ought to follow my personal opinions because the Bible tells you so. Well, the Bible doesn't really say that, but your interpretation of the Bible says that. So therefore, everyone should do what you say. Same with the Constitution. Like, the Constitution doesn't say that. And, like, for instance, like these comments about like, oh, this is why guns were put in there. This is the common thing about like interpretation of the Second Amendment. That was not what people were thinking when they made the Second Amendment. But people think this. Oh, my personal interpretation of the Constitution all of a sudden becomes universal. It's a crutch for taking personal beliefs and believing that they should be implemented on everyone. Oh my gosh. Explain why trickle-down economics doesn't work pertaining to the velocity of money. Jesus Christ. First of all, trickle-down economics like doesn't work in a lot of respects. One, because it's based on the Laffer curve, which is pretty much been proven wrong. Like, Laffer curve doesn't bring in more government revenue. But also, like, there's no mechanism in economics that causes wealth to go from the rich to the poor other than the government. So you can't, like, there's just doesn't, I mean, it just doesn't have anything to do with anything. Like, you're talking about accumulation of wealth, thinking that it's going to somehow like pass down to people lower down in the labor force, when that's just not how things go. Everyone knows that wealth accumulates higher up, and so you have government distribution of that wealth back down through progressive tech structure. So there's no trickling down. Like, if you're going to do trickle down economics, which was the idea that you can lower taxes and somehow increase government revenue, that just didn't happen. We weren't on that point of the Laffer curve. I mean, Laffer curve is this idea that if you tax everyone 100%, you bring in no government revenue. If you tax people 0%, you get no government revenue, and that there's this perfect sweet spot in between. And that theoretically, if we're ahead of that sweet spot, you could lower taxes and increase government revenue. But in practice, so Reagan decreased taxes and government revenue went down, proving that we were not on that point of the Laffer curve. We were before the peak. So, I mean, everything was just off. No one, like, Laffer curve, Reaganomics was fully like pushed into the realms of laughable economics. Like, no one follows that shit anymore. Anyway. Let's see here. Oh yeah, originalist constitutionalists are the worst, because you're again, it's reactionary kind of shit. You're taking your interpretation again and just claiming that this is what the founders were thinking, and it's like, no, you weren't. No, you weren't. Yeah. How much more right can the U.S. get? It's getting ridiculous. We'll see. We'll see next election cycle. It's getting bad. It's getting bad. It's not that the Laffer curve couldn't theoretically be true, but the peak of the Laffer curve might be like 80% tax rate. We have no idea what the peak is. The assumption that Reagan made was wrong, and so, but it's not that theoretically that idea isn't there, but it really the Laffer curve today would justify increasing taxes to get more government revenue, because we're not at the peak yet. So, anyway, I've been on here 3 hours, so um, I think I'm gonna say goodbye to everyone. Maybe one more question, and then we'll see if I have any good ones here. Of course, the founders had casual machine gun ownership in mind. That's why they talked about well-regulated militias. Totally wasn't a states versus federal thing. Yes, yes, this is absolutely the case. Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, the thing is, originalism again. It's like I was saying, like anytime, like it's just somebody's personal belief that they're trying to claim that there's some sort of like codified dogmatic structure for. It's just logically off. But anyway, thank you everyone. Thank you everyone. Thank you even people giving me a hard time. This was fun, and um, uh, I will see you guys next time. I'm always losing my voice near the end of this. Anyway, talk to you guys later.